He was reincarnated as a cat, but unusual. A magic-wielding, tomato-growing, half-divine loaf. Master of elemental summons. Champion of doing absolutely nothing after. He knows what he's capable of, and that's what scares him. He just wants a peaceful garden life. But what if his power falls into the wrong hands? Can a chill cat with god-tier magic stay out of trouble? Let's find out. This story begins with the protagonist introducing himself. He's a cat, and his name is Nagoro Kaito. Once upon a time he was a human, but one day he died. At the very least, a human body is clearly not capable of withstanding the impact of a car traveling at 150 kilometers per hour. And when he opened his eyes, he found himself in some white space, and in the form of a cat. The protagonist began to examine himself, noting his changes. Is he a tabby cat? And his paws, how wonderful and soft they are. So far, he was delighted with his new sensations. Then he thought that this was not the most important thing now. Now he needed to understand, is he currently in the world after death? Kaito remembered how in his past life he constantly laughed and proved to everyone that there is no life after death. The protagonist admitted, okay, there is life after death. He was wrong. By the way, in Buddhism there is a concept that after death, a person is reborn as a beast, depending on how he lived his life. At that moment, a female voice of a spirit suddenly rang out, which said that he had misunderstood. The protagonist asked in amazement who she was. The spirit suggested that he think about it. He would probably guess, because the answer was quite obvious. The protagonist thought for a moment, then asked, is she his grandmother, who died 4 years ago? The voice irritably answered that she hated such stupid jokes. Thinking that even now he was breaking away, he asked the spirit for forgiveness. Then, maybe she was something sublime? Something like a goddess? The spirit answered that he had noticed correctly. If he had been more polite, she would have given him more points. But so be it, she would add 5 points to him. The protagonist smiled contentedly and thanked her, although at that time he himself was perplexed. What other points? Then MC asked her if she would tell him about this situation. Spirit chuckled. Ah, is he interested? She thought he already realized that something in his life did not go as planned. He asked her in surprise, that is, he was not supposed to die? Spirit hesitated with an answer, but then said that in fact, she does not really care when some person lives or dies. The protagonist thought ironically, she is a true supreme being. She addressed him by name and asked him, didn't he save the cat that was almost hit by a car? Suddenly he remembered, and that's how it happened. It was the night when he drank heavily. On his way home, he saw a cat on the road. Spirit said that, in fact, this cat was supposed to be reborn then. But he died instead, but someone had to take the cat's place. Spirit continued that her boss gets angry when she tries to do something unnecessary, but some of her colleagues noted that his concern for the cat deserved attention. The protagonist was lost in logic in his thoughts for a moment. He asked her, will he be reborn as a cat? But he was a human, wasn't he? The spirit answered him that everything was so that she had not explained it clearly. Why would they even allow lower life forms like humans to reincarnate? She thought indignantly, who did they think they were? He thought for a moment and then answered her that he even felt sorry for humans. But why would deities pay such special attention to cats? She got angry and was not going to answer him such stupid questions. In short, now he can be reborn in another world as a cat. But this is a right, not an obligation. Therefore he can refuse and transfer this right to another. In this case, his mind will simply sink into the abyss and disappear. She asked him, what will he choose? The protagonist thought that he was choosing a choice without a choice, but he said out loud that it was obvious that he was choosing reincarnation. The spirit said that it was logical. She continued that the place he would end up in was not so technologically advanced, but there was magic there. It was a world where cats were very much loved, so in her opinion, he would be fine. In addition, given that she had given him 5 bonus points, he would have 8 points in total. He would gain an understanding of languages, a talent for magic, increased physical strength, luck, and various resistances. In short, he would be able to achieve a lot. He asked her in surprise, would he achieve everything like a cat? At that time, he was wondering what achievements a cat had. To breed more kittens? The spirit began to say goodbye to him. She wished him to enjoy his next life in the body of a cat. The protagonist heard her respond to her boss's call and began to make excuses to him for something. She told the boss that it wasn't her. What other pudding was in the fridge? She didn't touch anyone's pudding. Her boss must have left because she started asking him not to leave, but to listen to her. Then she asked irritably, why are all the adults such cowards? The protagonist, listening to her, thought, it seems like they have fun there. So he was safely reborn in another world in the body of a cat. Looking around, he finally realized that he was in some forest, among the mountains. The protagonist wondered, can rebirth be considered the fact that he was thrown out somewhere in the mountains? Without the slightest explanation, suddenly alone, and without clothes. He immediately grinned, because cats do not wear clothes. MC tried to walk, and realized that he was more accustomed to walking on 2 limbs. Shouldn't this be a problem? After all cats move on 4 legs. He looked around again and noticed the beautiful green trees, the blue sky, and the bright red flowers that he had never seen before. And yet he had heard on TV that cats saw everything in black and white. It was as if he could see everything like a human. The protagonist finally began to understand, or so it seemed to him, that he was a human in a cat's skin. He would have to start from scratch, living in the wild. He was supposedly a civilized modern Japanese man in his past life. He had only lived in the city, and he had no skills for surviving in the wild. He had not even been given the opportunity to prepare. He wondered what wild cats ate anyway. Mice, cicadas, beetles. And how did they eat them? Alive? The protagonist shuddered at the thought and thought that it was unrealistic. He decided to first set his priorities. First of all, he needed a place to sleep. He needed to figure out if it was even possible to live here. A great idea occurred to him. He needed to go to the human village. He set out, saying that he needed to stomp, stomp, stomp. He could walk, but his steps were small and he would hardly be able to run for long. He remembered that a female voice had told him something about magic. Maybe he could fly or do something else useful. He stood up, concentrated all his attention, stretched out his paws and called for the flame to appear. But nothing worked. The protagonist began to change poses, change the words of the call, but all to no avail. He thought that it was all useless. Where did a simple cat get such abilities? At that moment, someone called out to him and noticed that he had a very interesting coloring. Where did he come from? The protagonist raised his head and saw a creature on a tree branch with surprise. He said in amazement, "A fairy?" The spirit of the wind, in turn, was also surprised. "Is this a cat?" She asked him, "Is he really a cat?" The protagonist answered her that it was. For some reason, he is now who she sees him as. In another world, he was a human. The spirit thoughtfully noted that he looked like an unusual cat. He stood on his hind legs, walked, and talked. She asked him what world he was from. MC answered that he was from a world where there was a country called Japan. The girl exclaimed she had heard of that. It was near the Risul Mountains, right? Is it popular there to turn into cats? Kaito told her that she must have confused it with something, and he doesn't believe that such a thing could be popular in some country. The spirit answered that he had answered clearly. She asked what he was doing in the mountains. The protagonist told her that he had been transported here from another world. That's why he was now at a loss and didn't know what to do. The spirit said that this was the territory of the shooting star bears. It was quite dangerous here. Then she began to say goodbye to him. She wished him good luck. The protagonist asked her not to leave in a panic. He simply begged her to give him, a stray cat, at least some information, or at least some advice. Let her have mercy on him. He asked her not to leave him here alone. The spirit thought for a moment, then answered him that, well, she would help him. She was bored anyway. She wondered what he wanted to ask her. Kaito was interested in which direction the nearest human settlement was, and how far was it. If she knew it, of course. The spirit fell silent again, lost in her thoughts, then answered that, nevertheless, she would stay with him. Moreover, talking cats are still a rarity. She would help him a little. Sitting on his head, she pointed her finger into the distance and said that the nearest city was behind that mountain that was visible in the distance. As for the distance, if you take into account the cat's paws, then they would have to walk for 3 or 4 days. If he doesn't sleep, he will get there in 2 days. But that's impossible, isn't it? He answered her that she was right. That was impossible. The spirit continued that strong monsters roam here at night. It is better for him to climb a tree and sleep there. She noted that the most terrible thing he can meet here is, as she already said, the bears of falling stars. There are also ash wolves that roam in packs. None of them can climb walls. There are also various scary monsters and animals, but these are the most dangerous for him. The protagonist thought with gratitude that this was useful and accurate information. He asked her what kind of bears they were. The spirit answered that they are 2 or 3 times larger than people, and they also like to throw large stones, hence their name. In terms of strength, they can easily defeat a human knight. The protagonist's imagination instantly drew a ferocious monster of enormous size, with animal fangs, huge sharp claws, and evil eyes. The spirit noted that, fortunately, they didn't even get along with each other and walked alone. But if he came across such a beast, that it would be better for him to surrender to it right away. She thought that maybe then the monster would finish him off faster. The protagonist said sadly, well, bears, he hated them. Then he thanked the spirit and said that he would do everything to survive. Hanging his head dejectedly, he went in the direction that the spirit showed him. She, looking at him, at his hunched back, sighed and called out to him. She said that she was somehow too worried about him. The spirit asked what his name was. The protagonist, having cheered up, told her his name. She repeated it and grinned, saying, "What a name." He told her that she could just call him Kaito. MC in turn asked her name, calling her a fairy. She was indignant. Who was the fairy here? He was confused. Was he mistaken? The girl said that she was the spirit of the wind. She explained that In fact, they are all connected to each other and do not have names. What kind of identity can there be if they are all part of one whole? They share all their memories and experiences, although this is not so important anymore. The spirit continued that, if you think about it, aren't fairies companions of spirits? The protagonist answered her that in his past life, they were something like fairy creatures. Fairies are very beautiful, they also have wings, and they are the same size as her. She said affirmatively that they are spirits. In this world, there are many winged people and other winged species. But if something is small and with wings, then it is spirits. The protagonist was delighted. Winged people. He thought about fairies, spirits, and winged people. It seems that he has definitely ended up in a fantasy world. He now has high standards for this world. The spirit said that in this world, only those with magical powers can communicate with spirits. Did he know this? So, a cat talking to her is a rare occurrence. She did not expect it when she addressed him. She thought that she was talking to herself. MC noted. Magic, in fact, he would not mind casting spells. He asked her, is he really capable of this? The spirit did not know this. She said that magical power and talent for magic are different things. In martial arts, physical strength alone does not decide, right? Here it is the same. If he has magical power, it does not mean that he is a good magician. In fact, most people in this world cannot master it. He thought, well, this means that few people in this world use magic. He asked her, but how to use it at all? The spirit said that it would be better for him to ask a human magician about this. Spirit magic and human magic are also completely different things. He wondered if it would be possible for a cat to use human magic. She didn't know that. The spirit said that although she could use magic, she didn't really understand how she did it. It was something natural and self-evident to her, and she hadn't really observed how people did it either. By the way, the fact that he talked to her and understood her was already a kind of magic, that is, telepathy. He noted that he needed to prepare for the fact that it was impossible for him. And who would take a cat as an apprentice anyway? She answered that that was also true. But she was sure that somewhere there would be such an oddball who would agree to that. And also, many people would want to take a talking cat and use him for experiments. He couldn't even argue with that. He said that experiments on animals were inhumane. The spirit exclaimed that she had one working piece of advice for him. Let him just stay away from the research centers. His best option is to find some old retired mage who works as a healer. Let him gain his trust and then play on his cuteness. Before diving headfirst into the human world with their eternal conflicts and interfactional disputes, he should start small. He continued ironically saying, or he could just lie down on the lab table with his belly up. He gratefully noted that he would remember such a great piece of advice for the rest of his life. The protagonist thought to himself, maybe this spirit would take him? She interrupted his thoughts and said that it was time for him to go. While the sun was still high, he needed to walk as much as possible. He thanked her from the bottom of his heart for everything. He wanted to learn at least something about the forest unknown to him. Luckily for him, this wonderful spirit helped him, and so he took the first step towards his new cat life. They were heading towards the human settlement together with the spirit. When night fell, he went to bed under the watchful guard of the spirit. It was the 4th day of his descent from the mountain in the company of his companion. He felt that his body was already at its limit. The protagonist found a stick and used it as a staff, leaning on it. The protagonist thought that one should not underestimate the mountains. If it were not for the spirit, he would have already gotten lost and would be lying dead. It was very scary here at night. Strange cries of birds were constantly heard from afar. The breathing of animals was constantly heard among the bushes, and he also met a 30-centimeter and creepy centipede. The spirit noted his condition and told him not to worry. They avoided dangerous places, and she also uses the wind to hide his smell. In addition, she will immediately wake him up if there is danger. The protagonist thought with gratitude that if it were not for the kindness of the wind spirit, he would have to stand before the supreme being again. One day, the spirit said that from this place where they were now, a human settlement was not far away. She could not go any further. The protagonist understood her and thanked her with all his heart once again. He told her that he would never forget her help. If she suddenly needed his presence, then she should definitely find him. The spirit laughed. She would remember his words, but she did not think that he could help her with anything. She blew him a kiss and wished him luck. Fluttering, she bestowed her magical light on him. He thought, is this some kind of blessing from the spirit? Then he was even happier. The protagonist watched her go, then looked ahead and thought that his goal was at the foot of the mountain. From here, he could already see a large mansion. The spirit told him that there were several cities and villages in that direction, but she did not remember their names. She didn't really know anything about the local people, because she had never been interested in them. He didn't even find out the name of the town. He noticed that stumps of cut trees were already visible, which meant that there was a human settlement nearby. The The protagonist began to descend even more carefully, looking carefully at his feet. When he raised his head, he unexpectedly saw a fence. He thought, is this to prevent anyone from climbing in? Does that mean it's private property? He approached the fence and carefully looked around. It became clear to him that something was visible in the direction he was looking. Looking more closely, he saw tall, thick stems with large, bright red berries visible among the leaves. He realized that there were tomato bushes in front of him. Licking his lips, he thought that they were easy to grow, and the fruit was nutritious. It was a great companion for beginning gardeners. In addition, it also yields a good harvest. A real treasure of the plant world. Carefully approaching the first bush, he sank his teeth into the juicy fruit with pleasure. After biting into it, he thought it was very tasty. Tomatoes are very tasty. He wondered, were they always so wonderful? He thought with delight that he was ready to bow at the feet of Mr. Tomato. After eating one, he took a breather, then decided that he would eat another one. Biting into the next tomato, he did not immediately notice how Clarice approached him. When the protagonist realized that he was not alone, he thought with surprise, a girl? He was crazy about tomatoes and did not even notice her. What should he do? No, well, of course, since he started eating, then first of all, he needs to finish the tomato. The protagonist closed his eyes and quickly began to absorb the uneaten fruit, arousing more and more interest in her. When MC did, he carefully wiped his mouth with his paw and said that he apologized for stealing. But it was so delicious. He committed a grave sin. There is nothing worse for farmers than a vegetable thief. It is an unforgivable crime. But still, how delicious it was. Clarice turned to him in amazement and asked him, did he just talk? He told her that it was true. He could talk. But that didn't mean he had anything to pay for the tomatoes. No one had given him any money. He had wandered through the mountains for 3 days without food or drink. A little more and he would have died. The girl asked him, was he hungry? He grinned and said that he had just stuffed his belly with Signoro Pomodoro. She was surprised. What is he talking about? But more importantly, why was he talking? The protagonist remembered how the spirit had told him that it was better not to tell anyone that he was a human. He then asked her why. She explained that, first of all, he was not even a human of this world. Did he really think that the local people would have the same logic as the people of his world? She was right. That's why now when the girl asked him, he hesitated with his answer. He said that he had some kind of memory problem, and he himself didn't understand how he learned it. Kaido noted to himself that he wasn't lying very well. The girl asked him incredulously, was he really a cat? Or was he a child of a divine beast? Where did he come from? What was his name? Where was he going, anyway? Could she pet him? He thought that childish curiosity was really pushing him. The protagonist answered that she could pet him as much as she wanted. He was a nameless fool and a vegetable thief. He would answer any question she asked if she spared his life. Clarice reached out to him and gently petted him. He noticed that this was, in general, not bad. He even began to recognize for himself that he shouldn't touch his stomach, but he really liked the petting under his chin. He thought about how good it was. Suddenly the girl picked him up and, hugging him, carried him somewhere. The protagonist was scared. He turned to the young lady and asked her where she was taking him. Clarice smiled and told him that she would name him Luke. She was taking him to meet her father. Her father loved dogs, but she hoped that they would get along with him. He thought with pleasure about his new name. So, she would be his owner? The protagonist cut off his euphoria. He needed to think about all the options. If her father told her that she could not keep him, and that she should return him to where she got him, what then? He would be abandoned again, but the incident with stealing vegetables, in any case, would get away with it, or rather, with its paws. And then he had an idea. Kaido turned to her and said that keeping a cat is quite a big responsibility. It seems to him that her parents will be against it. Clarice told him that if everything goes as she thinks, he shouldn't get upset. Everything will be fine. An aristocrat can't miss out on such a rarity as a talking cat. The protagonist was surprised. An aristocrat? This is the territory of aristocrats? So this was their vegetable garden? So Clarice is also a young aristocrat? He smiled. This could be very good. Often pets of aristocrats live in clover. For a cat, there could be no better option for life. He wouldn't have to eat cockroaches and beetles. This would be just great. He was satisfied with this young lady. He asked her what her name was. The girl answered that she was Clarice Riedelheim. The protagonist asked if she liked cats. The aristocrat answered that she did. MC thought that he liked her. She had such strict and beautiful clothes, and this long silver hair. You can really feel the aura of an aristocrat. Now it finally became clear to him that a wonderful life as a pet awaited him. Again, that was if everything went well. Would they even want to leave such a young lady with a suspicious talking cat? He had to try not to give the impression of a bad guy. Besides, given his peculiarity, they might want to use him for espionage purposes. His vivid imagination immediately drew a picture of him in a business suit, dark glasses and with a gun in his hand carrying out a mission. He wondered if he would be able to refuse his new owners if they sent him to spy on enemy forces. Well, if the deal included 3 meals a day, a nap during the day, and a comfortable life, then he would agree. As long as they didn't let him in for experiments. Although he didn't think that would happen, the owner's daughter had grown up kind. He thought about Clarice's father. What kind of person was he? After a while, a maid named Sasha entered the office of Rise, Clarice's father, and told him something that made him frown. He asked the maid what she said. Clarice brought a cat. Rise believed that a cat was a small tiger. Yes, they have an excellent sense of balance, good flexibility, sharp fangs and claws, a wonderful night hunter. People consider them cute, but they remain predatory animals. They are egocentric and cruel creatures. They are far from obedient to dogs. Also, cats do not think about their owners at all. Impudent and evil idiots who consider themselves important. Their only advantage is that they catch rats and mice. But dogs can go hunting with their owner. They can be taught to herd cattle. Cats lose in usefulness to absolutely all animals. In other words, Viscount of the Kingdom of Rise Riedelheim was a dog lover to the core. Dogs, especially hunting dogs, are very good. They are smart, fast, and loyal. In addition, raising and educating them is a pleasure. But his daughter had picked up a cat, and he wasn't happy about it. He wouldn't have minded if she had picked up a puppy. He'd have let her keep even a rabbit or a bird. But he wasn't a cat person. Dogs were much more useful, and there was no point in comparing them, and they didn't get along with cats. Rise kept worrying about keeping a cat indoors because he would always be afraid that he would make a mess or break faces. If he kept him outside, he'd always have to worry about dogs eating him. And if dogs tore him apart, his daughter would be sad. So he decided that there was no place for a cat in this house after all. There was nothing he could do. He'd have to find somewhere to put him. Having made his decision, he noticed that the maid was still standing in his office. He asked her what was wrong. Was there something else wrong? She hesitated before answering. Her head was still filled with the acquaintance with this strange guest. When Clarice entered the house, she told Sasha that she had a talking cat in her arms. Sasha objected to her. There was hardly a place for a cat in this house. The protagonist was surprised. Is this the maid? He greeted her, introduced himself to her, and added that he was a homeless cat that Clarice had just picked up. He was also very glad to meet them. Sasha stared at him in amazement. Then she asked the young lady, "Is this really a cat?" The girl answered her that she called him Luke. She had just picked him up. The protagonist thought that he had already begun to get used to such emotions. The maid looked at him and thought, "Is this really a cat?" If she looked closely, it was. But how did a cat know etiquette? Clarice turned to her and said that she wanted to introduce her pet to her father. Would she be so kind as to serve them tea? She asked the protagonist if he would like some tea. He told her that of course he would, and thanked her for her concern. Stunned, Sasha asked him if a saucer would be good for him, or would it be better to serve him a cup? MC replied that a cup would be better, since the tea would quickly cool down in a saucer. The maid thought to herself, would he take the cup with his paws? Aren't cats sensitive to heat, and is it even possible for a cat to drink tea? Out loud, she said, as he wishes. He asked her if they had milk, if she would be so kind as to add it too. They say it helps with kidney stones. The maid thought, what an attentive cat to details. And now, standing in front of him, she didn't know how to explain this to Mr. Rise. The Viscount addressed her by name again and said that if there was anything else, she could say it without hesitation. She was still young and inexperienced, but she didn't have to worry, and she could tell him everything. There was no need to hide anything. The girl plucked up her courage, asked him for forgiveness, and remarked that the thing was that the young lady had brought a talking cat. She would like to introduce him to it. Rise was at first amazed by her words, and then he burst out laughing. He noted that his daughter had finally learned the art of negotiation. Sasha looked at her master in bewilderment, not understanding his reaction. The Viscount wondered if his daughter wanted to interest him in the fact that the cat was talking. Would he have a cat vassal? Having stopped laughing, he told the maid that he would meet his daughter. He asked her where they would meet, in the garden? Or were they already in the mansion? The maid hesitated again. Rise said that it concerned his daughter. She should not worry and give him a full and clear report. He wouldn't blame her for anything. Did she understand that? The maid nodded and told him that the thing was that this cat was enjoying tea with the young mistress right now. Astonished, Rise noticed what she said. A cat drinking tea? Wasn't tea bad for cats? He wondered if she and Clarice were playing like that. Sasha told him that wasn't quite true. This cat took the cup and lifted it with his little paws. She showed with her hands how he did it. The girl also noted that this cat asked to add milk to his tea. Surprised, Rise did not know what to answer her. The maid continued that the cat praised their delicious and aromatic tea. This information completely amazed him, and after some thought, he decided that it would be better for him to look at it himself. It must be said that Viscount Rise currently occupied the place of the head of the family, although he was not a biological child. He was adopted by a very influential merchant at the time. And when he turned 20, all his brothers died from a terrible epidemic. As a result, he had to take on the position of the head of the family. Despite this, he was also trained in trade, and 10 years of living in the merchant's family were not in vain for him. The merchant's habits did not go anywhere. He remained a person who, first of all, sees the benefit and appreciates people for their abilities. Approaching the room where his daughter was with the cat, he opened the door. And then he saw with his own eyes that the maid was telling the truth. The cat put down his cup of tea, bowed to him, and asked for his permission to introduce himself. The protagonist told the Viscount his real name and added that his name was now Luke. He was a stray cat that his beautiful daughter had taken in. It was a great honor for him that he had personally come so that he could introduce himself. He was also very embarrassed that he was taking up his precious time. Rise was speechless from amazement. He only thought in bewilderment, a cat? Was that really a cat? Clarice's face showed joy. She was the one who had taken him in. The Viscount put his thoughts in order and politely asked the cat to sit down first. The protagonist apologized, and with Clarice's help, he climbed onto the sofa and then into her arms. Rise noted to himself that he was acting as if he already lived in this house. He asked him what he should call him. Lord Kaito or Luke? MC politely told him to just call him Luke. He added that his real name would sound strange in their country. The Viscount remarked that in that case, who was he? Examining the cat, Rise noted that he had good fur, a charming face and paws, and a plump body. There was intelligence in his eyes, but he always thought that cats just looked smart. Most likely, this is in their wild nature. The Viscount immediately pulled himself up, no need to think rudely about the guest. Summarizing the details of his appearance, one can say that this is an ordinary cat that can be found anywhere. But cats definitely do not speak human language. He knew that in the capital there were magical dolls, both wooden and metal. Their movements could be controlled by magic. Now they are only researching them, but this research is going well. But they are still far from such quality. In other words, such technology is not yet developed enough. Therefore, this cat is not a doll. The protagonist said that the thing is, he is not from this world. He lived peacefully in another country until an accident happened, and then he was sent to this world. When he opened his eyes, he found himself in the mountains. He pointed with his paw to where exactly he woke up. Then the protagonist continued that there, in that place, he was lucky enough to meet the spirit of the wind, who led him out of the mountains in a few days. Rise, not believing his ears, said that he understood. So he is from another world? In other words, he is like King Strain, who founded Secrecy, and also like the military strategist Kirishima from the Kazal Kingdom, who saved his country, right? The protagonist was amazed. Who is this anyway? There are others in this world? So he is not the only one like this in this world? In the end, both Rise and the protagonist looked at each other in surprise. Kaito then apologized for his ignorance and remarked that it was the first time he heard these names, which was why he was surprised. He didn't know who they were, but judging by the name Kirishima, they might be from the same country. He asked the Viscount if he could meet him. Rise thought in amazement, so he didn't know anything about their world. Out loud, he answered the cat that they were two legendary people who came to them from another world. Unfortunately, they were both already dead. The Viscount added that of course, Luke was obviously different from them, because there were no records in history of talking cats from another world. He supposed that maybe these two legends were cats too? He immediately contradicted himself. Such theories didn't even exist. If we talk about heroes in the form of cats, then something like this can be found in Western legends. But in any case, these are all just fairy tales. The protagonist thought that the Viscount was alone in this. He remarked out loud, "That's how it is." Then he turned to Clarice's father. As he can see, he is just a stray cat now. He is at a loss now, and he does not understand where to go. He does not even have a place to live. For someone who just appeared out of nowhere, this will be a very selfish request, but he is even ready to work on the farm, if only to be useful. But let the Viscount allow him to stay and live with them, and work as a guard on the farm. He bowed his head and covered it with his paws. Rise was completely confused. A cat showing his desire to work? He looked at his daughter, and noted that she was looking at him with eyes full of hope. Rise thought, in fact, it is clear from her face that he has no choice. If he refuses her, then for several months, although not even that, at least 6 months will not talk to him. His daughter's anger was terrible. Clarice is extremely intelligent and obedient, but when she really wants something, she becomes very stubborn and persistent. Besides, this cat, if it is a cat, hardly fits the cat-keeping problems he was thinking about recently. But most importantly, this cat interested him. So he told the protagonist that he doesn't have to guard the fields. If he wants to stay, he can do so. They will even provide him with food, provided that he doesn't cause them any trouble. The Viscount asked him if he needs anything special to live comfortably. The protagonist couldn't believe his ears. Even like that? He asked Rise if he didn't think a talking cat was a bit too suspicious. The Viscount smiled. So he understood that perfectly well? A real miracle, not a cat. He told MC that of course it was very suspicious, so he can't leave him unattended on his territory. Besides, it would be a problem if he ran away later, taking all of his family's dirty secrets with him. But fortunately, they had a small estate and had nothing to hide. He wouldn't find anything here, even if he wanted to. He continued that there were almost no visitors from outside either. It was a great place to hide. So with his permission, he would evaluate him as a cat, not as a person. The Viscount asked him for permission to address him in a friendly manner, without any conditions. Rise pointed out that even if he considered himself an ignorant stray cat, he had intelligence and common sense. He would think about what could be done with him in the future, but for now, he could stay here with them. Besides, he had some plans, and the fact that he was from another world might come in handy. The Viscount continued that even if he was useless, a smart cat in the house shouldn't cause any problems. He also really didn't want to upset his daughter. The protagonist was very happy with the Viscount's words. He bowed to him and thanked him with all his heart. He remarked that he never thought he would receive such kind words, considering how suspicious he was, and he didn't even know how he could thank such a wonderful gentleman as Rise. Clarice's father said that one day, for sure, the time would come when he would be able to do so. He turned to his daughter. Did he hear that she had picked him up in the garden? Did she find him there? The girl answered him that it was so. Luke was eating red balls there. It seemed that he was very hungry. Clarice stroked her pet, and he trustingly pressed himself against her hand. The Viscount was surprised. What did she say? He ate red balls? The protagonist asked him for forgiveness in a frightened voice. He began to justify himself, saying that they were very tasty, and he ate 2 whole balls. Rise was even more surprised. 2? He thought that the red ball fruit was completely inedible. The outer shell was completely dry, and there was almost nothing inside except for a seed the size of a thumb. This plant is usually crushed and boiled to make paint, and it tastes very bitter. Besides, it is not life-threatening, but still poisonous. Do cats from another world have problems with taste? The protagonist kept apologizing. He had no idea that these balls were so expensive. The Viscount, seeing the cat's fear, hastened to reassure him that there was nothing like that. But they are not suitable for food, and they are used to create dye. Kaito was amazed. Dye? They make dyes from these delicious Signoro Pomodoro? The Viscount rubbed his neck and said with annoyance that it seemed like they did not quite understand each other. He asked the protagonist, do they call these red balls tomatoes in their world? Besides, calling them delicious is also strange. The outside is a dry shell, and inside is a seed. They are not suitable for eating at all, even if they are ripe. The protagonist was surprised to notice that they seemed ripe to him. They were so fresh, red, and glossy. In addition, they were refreshing and had a moderate sourness. Rise and the girl looked at each other in bewilderment. MC was upset at what an embarrassment it was. Who are these Signoro Pomodoro anyway? And he was also worried that everything had turned out somehow strangely. He had just received permission to stay from Viscount Rise, Clarice's father. Maybe he was now having doubts because he turned out to be a vegetable thief? The Viscount was wondering at this time. Were they really talking about their garden? He asked his daughter where he had been. Clarice told him that she had found him near the bed with red balls. She had seen him eating them. Rise thoughtfully said, should he check? Otherwise, they might have problems with the food they would feed the cat. He decided to go to the garden with his daughter. The Viscount told the protagonist that he was also coming with them. The protagonist readily accepted his offer. Leaving the mansion, they went to the garden. Kaito thought, what could be the problem with Signoro Pomodoro? He was absolutely sure that the taste and texture were like tomatoes blessed by the sun. Of course, there was a difference in names, but to use such delicious vegetables only as dyes seemed stupid to him. When they arrived at the garden, the protagonist once again made sure that these were indeed tomatoes. Rise, seeing the fruits, asked in bewilderment, what were these? What kind of red berries were these? Kaito noted that, after all, they were talking about different vegetables. The Viscount answered him that there definitely should have been red balls growing here. Of course, they could have been transplanted, but he had seen them here only 3 days ago, and no one would have had time to transplant them. He bent down to touch the fruit and said in surprise that the fruit was heavy. It was definitely filled with something inside. The Viscount turned to the protagonist and asked him if he had eaten them. The MC told him that he had. They looked delicious and he couldn't help himself. Rise said that indeed, the fruit looked delicious. He asked the cat if the fruit was sweet. Kaito laughed and said that it wasn't very sweet, but it had a refreshing taste with a slight sourness. There were people who didn't like it, but the vegetable itself was great and could be eaten raw or cooked. He thought for a moment, why was he explaining to the owner of the garden what a tomato was? Well, he needed to gather his thoughts. There were no tomatoes in this world, but maybe it was a similar plant with a different name. If that were the case, Rise wouldn't be surprised by what a tomato looked like and would immediately understand what was going on. Besides, he claims that there used to be another plant growing here. The protagonist picked one of the fruits, brought it to his mouth, and noticed that he suddenly had a bad feeling. Despite this, he bit into the tomato with pleasure, quietly purring with pleasure. He was sure that it definitely tasted like a tomato, fresh and juicy, an incredibly delicious farm tomato. He could never forget that taste. In his past life, his neighbor, who had her own garden, often gave them to him. She experimented with different types of tomatoes and eventually created the perfect variety. Based on all this, an idea was born in his head. Everything could be much more complicated than he thought. Previously, there was another plant growing here called the red ball, and he, by some force, it is not clear what, was able to change it into tomatoes. If that is the case, then it would be cool. He bit into another piece of tomato with pleasure. Clarice, looking at the appetite with which he ate these fruits, told her father that she would try it too. Rise objected that he would not allow her to do this. What if the fruit was poisonous? The girl protested. It would be more logical if she tried this vegetable first, not him. The protagonist was surprised. His mistress was not afraid of poisoning? Oh, he misunderstood. She just wanted to taste this fruit so much that she could not resist. The father noted that she should not say stupid things. The protagonist agreed with him on this. Rise continued that they would take it home and ask the others for their opinion. He asked his daughter to call Lilfley. She knew more than him. Clarice answered him that she would fulfill his request. The protagonist's imagination, meanwhile, drew a richly laid table with various delicacies. Rise stayed to pick more tomatoes. Clarice, with the protagonist in her arms, went to fulfill her father's request. On the way, the girl turned to him. She asked him, was it he who brought these plants with him, right? The protagonist thought she was smart. Almost, but not quite. He told her that he hadn't quite figured it out yet. Maybe he had done it unconsciously. It was a very popular vegetable from his world. Clarice said it looked delicious. Kaido confirmed that it was. It was delicious. You could eat it raw, and you could cook dishes with it. She said that she would really like to try it too. The protagonist made a reasonable point, if only her father would allow her. He asked her who this Lilfly was. Clarice told him that she was her cousin and her father's niece. She calls her little sister Lil. She has a talent for magic, and she lives in a separate building where she does her research. She knows a lot, and she is also very kind. Then she hesitated a little. The protagonist asked her what was the matter. The girl continued that her sister was a little shy, so let him keep that in mind. He wondered, can a person even be shy in front of a cat? And what does that mean, a little? After a while, they approached a wooden house. Clarice knocked on the door and warned her sister that she had come and was coming to see her. Kaido remarked, is that possible? The girl answered him that when his sister is busy with research, she never notices anyone. He sniffed and asked his mistress if her relative makes perfume. It just smells really good here. She replied that it was a product. The perfume and magic water that her sister makes sells really well. He was surprised. Magic water? At that moment, Lilfley entered the room and greeted Clarice. The protagonist's eyes widened at what he saw. Lilfley noticed him and asked her sister if it was a cat. The protagonist, meanwhile, simply couldn't take his eyes off her. He wondered admiringly, who was this beauty with the face of an angel? No, his mistress also had a bright future in this regard, but now he was facing a goddess herself. She was simply an incredibly beautiful girl. Had she come down here from heaven? Outwardly, she looked simply perfect. Everything about her was wonderful. He now even felt offended that he had ended up in this world in such a guise. Meanwhile, Lilfly asked the girl if she had picked up a cat. Clarice answered that she had. Did she also like cats? Lilfly answered that her sister was right. To be honest, she had always dreamed of a cat. The last time she had petted a cat was when she was 18 to 20 years old. Still, she missed that fluffiness. Clarice said that she could pet Luke. He was very fluffy. Lilfly smiled and noted that it seemed that the cat was a little scared. Meanwhile, the protagonist still could not take his amazed eyes off her. She doubted whether she should have touched him. Clarice didn't think her cat would mind though. She asked him what he thought about it. He shook all over from the upcoming pleasure and replied that her sister could do whatever she wanted with him. Clarice stared at him in surprise. What was wrong with him? The protagonist looked at Lilfly's face again and noticed that she had such an innocent and sweet expression, like a real angel. The girl, meanwhile, stared at him with a puzzled look. Then she asked Clarice where she heard that voice from. The girl was embarrassed and replied that it was Luke speaking. She asked him to introduce himself to her sister properly. The protagonist smiled sweetly, pressed his paws to his chest, and greeted Lady Lilfly. His name is Luke. He is a homeless cat that Lady Clarice recently took in. He added that he was useless for now, but he really appreciated being allowed to stay. The girl was extremely surprised. She turned to him as if he were a gentleman in surprise. He remarked that it seemed as if he had just been demoted. First he was a cat, and now she called him gentleman. He continued that, except for the fact that he could talk, he was an ordinary cat. He would not scratch, bite, or be naughty. If she had any wishes, he could do anything. He just wouldn't like to catch mice. Lilfly stepped back in surprise, but her heel broke and she fell to the floor. She turned to her sister in a trembling voice and asked her if he was a cat or a person. She didn't understand anything. The protagonist grinned. It was clear to him that this girl had a much more ordinary reaction than the others. He remembered that Clarissa, when she first saw him, had an unhealthy curiosity about him from the very first minutes. And Viscount Rise was unexpectedly kind to him. That's why he somehow forgot what the reaction to him should be. He really wanted to rush to help this angel. So he jumped from the arms of his young mistress and rushed to her sister. Clarice said that Daddy allowed it, and so Luke would live with them. She asked Lil to make friends with the cat. Lilfly couldn't get over it. She pointed at the cat and was very surprised that the cat could talk. The cat introduced himself and said that his name was Luke the Smart One. Lilfly asked about smart cats being able to talk. MC answered that it was simple for Clarice. He extended his paw to Lilfly and said that he didn't know if she would believe him or not, but he was a cat from another world. He didn't know anyone else here, so he would like to be friends with her. Lil thought about it but reached out and shook his paw. Stuttering, she said that she was glad to meet him and said hello. Lil was surprised that the cat didn't run away and that she could touch him. She asked Clarice for permission to hug the cat. Clarice agreed. MC thought that he wasn't asked for permission to do that? Lilfly hugged the cat to her chest and was happy that he was fluffy and soft. Luke thought about how soft he felt and how delicious it smelled all around. He stopped his thoughts that this was not right. He understood that he was a cat now, but did such a dirty lump of fur like him deserve such happiness in his life? What good had he done? Luke remembered that he had died under the wheels of a car while saving a cat. It turns out that he deserved it. Lilfly asked Clarice if she could borrow the cat from her, but only when Clarice would allow it. Lilfly said that she adored cats, but they always ran away from her. This was the first cat that did not run away from her. MC thought that there really were people who were too worried and this could scare away cats. Luke turned to Lilfly and clarified that he was a cat, not a she-cat. Lilfly hugged him to her chest again and called him a cute and fluffy cat. He was very cute. Luke realized that they were not listening at all. He wondered if Lilfly really needed a cat in his life. Clarice looked at the hugs and smiled sweetly. She said that we would give her Luke whenever she wanted, and in return, Lil would always be on her side when she argued with her father. Lilfly agreed. Luke thought that Clarice had just found a new ally with his help. Lady Clarice was a cat lover, but also an intriguer. Clarice remembered that her father called Lilfly and told her about it. She said that the red balls that were planted at their place had turned into another plant that they had never seen before. She found the cat when he was gobbling up the fruits of this plant. Clarissa asked if Lil had heard of Signoro Pomodoro. Lil asked again, Signoro Pomodoro? She had never heard of them. Maybe the red balls had mutated? Luke asked what the red balls looked like. Is there a picture? Lil came up to the bookshelf and said that his fruit should be there. Luke thought that they would not let it out of their hands. Lilfly took a red ball out of the box and showed it. The protagonist thought about it. This fruit was very similar to Physalis, but closer to a tomato in color, and the shape was a little different. Luke asked that this fruit was used here as a dye? What kind of plant is this? And if you look at the fruit from afar, it looks like a tomato. Coming down from the mountains, MC was so hungry that he could mistake this fruit for a tomato. As a result, because of him, the fruit took the shape of a tomato, but this still needed to be checked. Luke asked to hold this fruit in his paws. Lil said that she had many more like this. Luke held the fruit but thought it was a tomato, and as a result, in front of everyone, the fruit turned into a tomato. The protagonist looked at the tomato and thought it was a dream. No, it is not a dream, but no one will believe them. If he eats a tomato now, he will destroy the evidence. Lilfly asked how the red ball changed shape. Clarice asked Luke what it was. MC thought about the fact that there were witnesses. Lilfly asked how Luke did it. Was it magic or not? Luke remembered how the Supreme Being told him that she gave him 5 bonus points, and he had 8 points in total. He would gain understanding of different languages, a talent for magic, increased physical strength, luck, different resistances, and would be able to achieve many things. And indeed, he understands local languages. It is not entirely clear about physical strength, but he can walk on 2 legs. As for luck, the fact that he met the Spirit of the Wind and the Viscount can be considered luck. Besides, if you think about it, he ate 3 tomatoes and his cat's stomach did not even complain. Isn't that strange? So he thought that the Supreme Being was not lying about magic either. The only thing he wasn't sure about was that it could be considered magic. He imagined that he would throw fireballs or fly, like in the game. But this is fantasy. There are probably a lot of inexplicable things here. He thought that it was closer to a miracle than magic. Lil repeated several times that Luke had changed shape. MC said that he himself doesn't understand what's going on. In his past world, he couldn't do anything like that. Maybe this is a special ability that he received when he got to this world? Clarice thought about it and asked if Luke could turn this tomato into a bird, for example. The protagonist closed his eyes and imagined a bird. But when he opened his eyes, he saw that nothing had happened. The girls agreed with him. Lil asked if he could turn the tomato back into a fruit. Luke closed his eyes again and tried to imagine it. But again, nothing worked. Clarice took a log and suggested trying. Luke put his paw on the log, closed his eyes, but nothing worked. The shape of the log did not change. Clarice asked the protagonist if he could turn a log into something made of wood. Luke thought about it and remembered the wooden carved bear figurine. But again, it was a miss. Nothing had changed. Clarice said that she hoped that this time it would work. Luke suggested making something edible, food similar to a log. He couldn't believe that he had come up with it. This dish was the bûche de Noël itself. Lil Fly and Clarice looked at him attentively. Luke said that in other words, he could turn objects into food that he had eaten in his past life. Iron rods, a carved bear figurine, and red balls, he hadn't eaten any of these, so he couldn't turn them into these. In addition, the object had to be at least vaguely similar in appearance. Therefore, he couldn't turn a log into a tomato. If he had known about this ability earlier, he wouldn't have been suffering from hunger in the mountains. He didn't understand why they hadn't given him a piece of paper that would explain how these abilities worked. While the ladies froze over the dish they didn't understand, Luke jumped towards the buffet and took the cutlery. He listed the cutlery, a plate, a fork, and a cup. MC asked if there was hot water, or rather, he needed water, and he could turn it into hot water with his ability. He scooped up water from a large vessel into a jug with a ladle. He looked into it and got tea. Whether he was a person or a cat, with this ability there would never be problems with food. Luke said that since they were experimenting, he suggested that they try this dish to taste. He wished everyone a bon appetit. Clarice looked at the new dish in surprise. Lil asked her not to try it because it had just been firewood. What if it was just an illusion? Clarice broke off pieces with a fork and held them in her mouth. Her eyes were surprised. Lil and Luke watched her carefully. Clarice said that it was very tasty, sweet, and delicious. It melts in your mouth. She suggested that Lil definitely try it. Luke thought he had overdone it. Judging by Clarice's reaction, there were no cream or biscuit sweets in this world. Maybe sugar was a treasure here? He decided to try it himself. After eating a piece, he remembered the sweetness of chocolate, berries and fruits, soft biscuit, and a refreshing aftertaste. What was there to hide? Bûche de Noël was a real sweet dream of a high school student. He had once been given it for his birthday instead of a cake. Considering how good it was, anyone would have fallen in love with this dessert. Even Clarice. Luke said that he had read somewhere that cats' tongues were incapable of tasting sweets, but it looked like his tongue was more like a human's. Besides, they say that cats can't eat chocolate. Maybe it was because a divine being had given him the ability to resist various forms of resistance, and that's why he could eat whatever he wanted. However, no one could change the fact that he could get fat. Luke was a cat who knew how to control himself. Clarice had tried to persuade Lil to eat at least a piece. There was fear on Lil Fly's face, but after trying it, she and Clarice ate the whole dessert. A piece and another piece. Clarice began to persuade Luke to make another dessert like this. But the protagonist sternly answered, no. This dessert is very tasty, but if you eat a lot of it, you can easily gain extra weight. He did not say that it is harmful to health, but if you eat a lot of such an unbalanced diet, it will harm the body. Clarice has a growing body, so it is important to eat healthy food. Of course, a pet should pamper its owner, but he is not going to do this to the detriment of her health. Clarice became sad. Luke proudly said that as a pet, sometimes you have to be cruel to your owner. Clarice became very sad. Luke asked if she would eat some Signoro Pomodoro. Clarice reached out her hands to the tomato. She took a bite and said that it was also delicious, a very unusual taste. The reaction was not as strong as after dessert, but over time she will be able to understand the true value of a tomato. It will become the basis of her healthy body and spirit. Lil called Luke. He turned to her and caught himself looking at her chest. Lilfley said that she did not quite understand how this magic worked. She was also a mage and could use magical assessment. If Luke did not mind, then she could assess him. Perhaps it would be possible to learn something about his abilities. The protagonist asked that such magic existed, then he agreed. He had already told that he was from another world, but he wanted to hide the fact that he was a human and other dark stories about his past. If this became known, then everything could turn out badly, and he did not want to die again at all. Luke asked Lil what could be seen there. Some memories would be visible? Lil answered that this would not happen. Now she would tell what exactly could be learned. Magic involves controlling the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and air. There is also magic that affects the mind and feelings. Holy magic uses the power of faith. Also, don't forget about spatial magic, which allows you to create barriers and basically control space. People can basically be born with a talent for one or more types of magic, but most people can't do magic in principle. With the help of a magical assessment, you can find out if you have talent and whether it's worth developing. Luke replied that it became clear to him. In other words, this is an aptitude test. Clarice said that Lil has a talent for water magic and holy magic, and Lilfleece said that she can also throw fireballs, but that's not her strong point. Lil said that holy magic is not easy to learn here, because the Riedelheim family is not priests. In the end, she is best at mastering water magic. Luke replied that he would allow her to examine him. He himself would not mind learning more about himself. Lil said that she will do everything now. Luke told Clarice that Lil seemed to be having fun. Clarice replied that Lil was glad that another fellow mage had appeared. MC decided to wash up. He said that the spirit told him that most people couldn't use magic. But there were no more mages here, were there? Lil thanked him for waiting. She asked Luke if he knew what kind of magical tool this was. MC replied that it was the first time he saw such a stone slab. Lil said that it was a magic mirror. It is a tool that reacts to magical power. For example, if a person can use light magic, the mirror will glow brightly. And with the help of recording magic, you can make notes in it and record your voice. There is also mathematical magic, cartographic clairvoyance, and weather forecasting. Each mage can use this thing depending on his abilities. Luke thought about it and said that it was something like a smartphone but without the ability to call. Lil said that the results of the magical assessment will also be reflected here. Magic talent is a gift from the gods to souls. Basically, talent is an innate thing. It is very rare that talent awakens at a late age, but this cannot be achieved through training and hard work. It is the result of direct contact with gods and other divine beings. Luke thought, contact with gods? So he communicated with a potential goddess? It turns out that she blessed him or something like that. Lilfleece said that this will not only let him know whether he has talent or not, but will help to know the level of his abilities. It will become clear whether it is possible to develop them or not. Luke thought that he might have a teacher in her. Lil asked if Luke could hold her hand. MC replied that it would be difficult to do so because he has paws. Lil apologized to him. Luke held out his paw and Lil said that it was very cute. Luke asked to be cute some other time. Lil held the paw with one hand and touched the board with the other. Everyone watched attentively and waited for the result. A note appeared on the board. Evaluation object, Luke. Race, demigod. Abilities, cat magic, holy magic, dark magic, all elemental resistance, resistance to mind control. Special abilities, imitation, Akasha connection, king of beasts, ability enhancement. Titles, miracle worker, cat hero savior, blessed by the spirit of the wind, tomato servant, 3 English classes, udon master. Luke was surprised by what was written. Clarice asked again, how is it that the race is a demigod? So Luke is not a cat but a god? Luke felt sick from these results. He stopped himself and thought about the fact that he needs to solve problems as they arise. Right now, Lilfleece and Lady Clarice are in shock. He needs to think of something to calm them down. Luke started washing himself like a real cat. He didn't think of anything. Clarice asked Luke about being a god. MC shook his head and said, no, he's not that important at all. He's a cat. Just a poor stray cat. Lil said that ordinary cats can't turn firewood into dessert unless he's a god. Luke begged Lil to stop this conversation. He's not a god, so don't treat him like that. Besides, it said demigod, so he's not god material. There's a reason there's a semi-prefix there. A semi-automatic and an automatic pistol are not the same thing. Or do they think he's wrong? Luke asked what cat magic was. Lil replied that she was seeing this for the first time too, and didn't understand anything. Apart from the skill of various resistances, she didn't see anything familiar. And you can't have talent for holy magic and dark magic at the same time. Luke thought that so many unknown words were written, like 3 grades of English. Why did it become a title upon reincarnation? Why did he need this knowledge here anyway? Moreover, people don't know anything about this language anyway. What is a connection with Akasha? Even he didn't know about this and hoped that it was not dangerous. With imitation, everything is not clear either. Maybe it was thanks to this ability that he turned the red ball into a tomato and the firewood into dessert? It can be concluded that he was indeed given a strange power. But why did they give him the race of a demigod? The locals will be shocked. Luke begged the girls not to tell the Viscount about this. Lil exclaimed that he was a demigod. If they did not show him enough hospitality, then divine punishment would fall on them. Luke shouted that everything was wrong. When he was sent to this world, the deity was too kind to him, but he was an ordinary cat. Clarice asked again that he was just a cat that walked on his hind legs and talked. Just a cat that made a delicious dessert out of firewood? Luke replied that there were small nuances, and asked to give him a chance. He just wants to be an ordinary cat. There is no problem with being treated like a god, but he is afraid that they will ask for the impossible. For example, to defeat the Demon King or save the world, he does not like that. Just because he's a demigod doesn't mean he can do it. He won't. What can a cat defeat except mice? And he can't even hunt mice. Clarice picked Luke up and said that since he asked, she wouldn't tell Daddy. He snuggled up to her with pleasure and said that was the answer he wanted to hear. Luke found himself thinking that he felt good in the arms of a little girl. How nice it was to be a cat. Lil Fly tried to object to Clarice. Clarice asked Lil to think about it carefully. If they weren't on Luke's side, he would leave. Then, they wouldn't be able to eat all the delicious things. MC thought how practical Clarice was. Lil said that in that case, if he didn't mind, they would address him as Your Holiness. Luke asked not to do that, to address him as a regular cat. Lil said that it was time to go back because her uncle called her. Luke thought about testing his abilities at his leisure. Imitation, connection with Akasha, King of Beasts, ability enhancement. So far, he knows the power of these things only by names. Maybe he can turn into a super cool tiger? The main thing is not to scare Clarice. In everyday life, maintaining the form of a tiger will not be very inconvenient. But he will turn into a scary and dangerous tiger when he finds himself in trouble. He will need to come up with a cool pose for transformation. Luke is a real tiger. King of Beasts, tiger form. It was a completely peaceful and ordinary desire. Clarice asked why Luke meowed. The protagonist replied that it does not matter. In about an hour, the estate will collapse. The Viscount asked about the girls returning home. He said that they were absent for a long time. Luke replied that a lot had happened. Lilfley said that they talked about tomatoes and tested some things. For example, the edibility of tomatoes. In appearance, tomatoes are somewhat similar to red balls. But first, we need to understand what will happen if we eat them for a long time. She tasted the tomato and it didn't seem poisonous to her. The taste was excellent. The Viscount thought about it and said that for the sake of the experiment, they should give the volunteers a tomato every day. This is the best way to find out everything. Luke said that tomatoes have a lot of water, so it is better to eat them fresh, otherwise there will be no benefit. Lil asked if it is possible to store tomatoes in the refrigerator. MC was surprised that there is a refrigerator here. The Viscount said that Lil makes ice with her magic, and they store it in a wooden box. Luke thought about how he shouldn't have expected the refrigerator to be electric. Lil Fly said that creating ice with water magic is a great way to make some money. Clarice said that almost all the ice in the nearest town is created by Lil's magic. Luke said that this is a great place to store it. The Viscount was surprised. Luke was glad that he could meet all the servants. The Viscount warned everyone about him in advance. Clarice said that everyone was so surprised that some of their mouths couldn't close. Luke appreciated this joke. The Viscount said that since he introduced the cat to all the servants, it was time to introduce him to the dogs. Luke thought about it. The Viscount thought that he had to show them Luke, otherwise the dogs might mistake him for a stray cat. The protagonist was scared. The Viscount said that all his dogs were very smart. Everything would be fine. He just wanted to avoid unpleasant circumstances. Luke was indignant. This would be a face-to-face encounter with fear. There are 12 dogs and 10 horses in this estate. Pack horses and knight's horses are kept in the city. Here, there are mainly horses for Raisin's personal use. It is customary in the country to collect taxes for keeping animals. The neighboring estate keeps chickens, sheep, pigs, and cows on its territory. Luke asked about each farm's own tax. The Viscount replied that the tax depends on the scale and type of livestock bred. But horse breeding is always taxed. Many prefer to leave the farm to those who live on the territory and collect the taxes themselves. When the territory is small, you need to be careful with this because the farm can affect market prices. He pointed to the barn where the dogs were kept. The Viscount didn't like that it was very quiet there. He turned around, and the dogs were standing behind him. Everyone froze in one place. The dogs bowed in unison, and the leader of the pack barked that they were listening to the order of the ruler. The Viscount didn't understand what was happening. Luke wondered if this was the work of a deity? The dog called the cat the King of Beasts and said that it was an honor for them. Luke was surprised that the dogs knew him. In what sense is he the King of Beasts? But he doesn't have any royal pedigree and qualities of a ruler. The Viscount kept repeating in surprise, What is this? He was shocked by the dog's behavior. He turned around and asked Luke, did he do something? The cat's behavior strategy. The first option is to pretend to be a fool. He will say that he has nothing to do with it. Of course, he strongly doubts that they will believe him. The second option is to confess. He will say that in fact he is the King of Beasts. Even if the Viscount believed it, Luke would be in trouble. The third option was to put on a sweet face. Say that Luke didn't understand anything. This was a good option, but Luke wasn't sure it fit the situation. The fourth behavior pattern was to make a convincing argument and use facts. Perhaps this was the only option. Luke said that the dogs were greeting him and he should greet them back. He jumped out of Clarice's arms and ran to the dogs. The leader of the pack thought that this was exactly what he should expect from the ruler. After all, he had already mastered the young Lady Clarice. Luke said not to say such ambiguous phrases. He asked them to raise their heads. He told the dogs to relax and greet him simply. The leader asked if this was an order, then they would carry it out. All the dogs agreed. Luke said that the information that he was the king of beasts was unreliable, and that he was a simple cat. The leader did not understand what he was saying. After all, he was a demigod and the highest creature that exists in this world. This is what they were waiting for all this time. This is what the prophecy said. Here is the king of beasts and appeared to them. From now on they will serve him faithfully and truly. Luke thought. Luke continued to talk to the dogs while Rise stroked them. The dogs were happy about this and stuck their muzzles in his hands. He calmed them down. Quieter, quieter. Luke climbed on the back of one of the dogs and asked, that is, the king of beasts was supposed to be an animal that came to them on 2 legs. Did he understand correctly? The dog answered, absolutely right. It was the leader of the dog pack, the dog Sissel. As soon as the cat left the mansion and headed in this direction, they noticed his presence. Apparently his scent is carried by the wind, but it seems that his abilities do not extend to fish, insects, turtles, and reptiles. Cecil said that if it were not for the upbringing of Mr. Rise, maybe they would not have understood how to accept the cat. They had already been trained before, and perhaps that is why they are loyal to him. Therefore, depending on the animal, the effect can be different. Luke asked, do they communicate with him using telepathy? Cecil answered, no, they can communicate only thanks to the cat's abilities. Firstly, they do not communicate with words at all. The king of beasts is able to transmit the thoughts of animals. This is one of his features. The intention of dogs and will is transmitted to the king through his ability in a form in which the cat can best understand them. The cat agreed, let's say. Then he asked, but why does Cecil know details that even the cat does not know? Cecil said, it is engraved in their thoughts on an instinctive level. On the other hand, there is a cat who is not bound by such rules. This once again proves that he is not an ordinary animal, but a demigod. Luke was surprised, but during the magical assessment, no one knew about these abilities. Cecil said, animals are more sensitive to such an ability than people. Luke received the form of a beast, which personifies divinity. People are just a tool for the movement of the fate of this world. After death, their souls will only sink into oblivion without the right to be reborn. The protagonist thought, divinity, then the highest told the truth. No person after death, with a few exceptions like him, does not have an afterlife. Cecil continued, people do not have this. Only animals after death become spirits and are transferred to the next world. There are exceptions when someone is reborn in the same world if their spirit is not ready. He said that he himself has already been reborn as a dog 3 times. Luke thought, so Cecil is a dog with a lot of experience. Cecil turned to Mr. Luke and asked what he plans to do next. The cat did not understand the question. Cecil clarified, going to destroy humanity to build a kingdom of animals? Luke reassured him, of course not. He does not like this idea. Only coexistence. He plans to lead a peaceful life. Cecil was glad. This is really a good idea. He said that they served Mr. Rise faithfully and truly, and he really didn't want the king of beasts to lead them against the one who had been kind to them. Luke said so. Cecil could tell everyone that they shouldn't be afraid of such an outcome. By the way, if people are inferior creatures, then why do dogs recognize Viscount Rise as their master? Isn't that a contradiction? Cecil was surprised, wasn't he? Well, Luke also recognizes Lady Clarissa as his mistress, right? The cat agreed, well yes, that's right. He yawned and thought, and yet how warm it is on the dog's back, and he doesn't feel guilty, like he does on Mrs. Lilfley's chest. People can't understand what it's like to lie on such a fluffy and soft back. After tea, he couldn't lie down to rest, but he wanted to, and he dozed off a little. After some time, Rise called him. He noticed that the cat and the dog seemed to be getting along. He said that Luke was clearly not an ordinary cat after all. The protagonist answered that animals can often communicate with each other. Luke can be considered a good translator from animal language. Then the cat conveyed that the dogs tell Mr. Rise that they will continue to serve him faithfully and will repay him with the same kindness that he showed them. That's what Cecil told the cat. Rise was very surprised by this. He asked if the cat understands what the dogs say. The cat explained, not exactly the words, rather, he understands the meaning of what they want to say. It is immediately obvious that Cecil is the smartest and wisest of them, and he shows great devotion to Rise. When Cecil was a puppy, he injured his back leg, and he is still grateful to Rise with all his heart that Rise took care of him then. The cat said that Cecil wanted to tell Mr. Rise all this. Rise was surprised and excited again. He hugged the dog. The cat said that Cecil is very honest, and he thought to himself, after all, dogs are cool. While Rise was hugging Cecil, Luke thought, yes, the king of beasts. I wonder if he had encountered the shooting star bears back then, maybe he would have gone down the path of cruelty and led them to conquer humanity. What if he was sent to this world to organize an animal rebellion against all of humanity? Or was this a social experiment? Was he just a guinea pig from the start? There were so many questions. Suddenly, Lady Clarissa took him in her arms. He was surprised. She said it was already time for dinner. He was happy. Food. With the help of imitation, he could create any food that he had ever eaten in his past world, including Japanese cuisine, but he was also interested in local dishes. Perhaps they would not seat him at the same table with everyone, but they would probably let him try something, right? They entered a large dining room. Rise pulled a child's chair to the table and offered the cat to sit. Luke was surprised and asked if he could also eat the same food. Rise answered that the cat was Clarice's guest after all. Lilfley also asked to be treated as an equal. Rise said that he could not treat Luke like a simple animal. Luke jumped on the chair, and Rise asked if he could reach the table. Luke was surprised, on a child's chair, but the height was perfect. He could not even be indignant. He thought, in general, weren't the aristocrats too kind to him? Maybe in this world the aristocrats were not so arrogant, and the boundaries were blurred. Also, the cat looks at how Rise communicates with his services, and it is immediately clear that they are quite close. Luke thought, usually the foundations of society are influenced by education and religion. Come to think of it, he should understand more about the structure of this world. Rise loudly wished everyone a bon appetit. A lot of food appeared on the table. Rise said that he hoped that the protagonist would like it. Luke thanked him for this. The cat tried the soup first. It was delicious. Hot soup, right after a long time in the mountains. The perfect amount of salt and wonderful vegetable broth, so delicious that it brings tears to his eyes. He has not eaten home-cooked food for a long time. Clarissa watched Luke gobble it up, and was surprised that the cat ate the soup with a spoon. Lilfley also watched the protagonist and was surprised that the cat used a fork and knife. Luke gobbled up the food placed in front of him and thought, that is, the local cuisine, even among an aristocrat, is very simple. It's only a matter of time before he starts promoting the cult of tomatoes. You just need to figure out the yield. Just turning tomatoes from red balls every time will be quite a hassle. Rise thought and said, the chef was afraid that the cat would not like the food. But it was the opposite. The cat ate everything that was put before him and said, everything was very tasty. Very, very tasty. The protagonist decided to ask Mr. Rise, by the way, if Luke finishes eating faster than everyone else, then what is the etiquette for him to behave? Rise said that there is no need to worry about it too much. In the past, it was customary to wait until the owner finished the meal, but now they do not have such rules. And if Luke does not have time to eat, then Rise can sit and wait. It is not difficult for him. The protagonist thanked him and said that in this case, he would like to compliment the chef. This food had ingredients that Luke had never encountered before. Rise invited the cat to look into the kitchen. He called Sasha and asked her to take the protagonist to the kitchen. Sasha pulled the cat's chair away from the table and asked him to follow her. The cat jumped down and happily agreed. Okay? He followed Sasha down the hallway and looked at her. This maid's name is Sasha. She looks mature, but she's only 15 years old. She's a newbie who started working here 6 months ago. By the way, Clarissa is 9 years old, Lilfley is 19, and the Viscount is 38. Rise also has an older son, but he's currently studying in the capital and he's about 15 years old. Sasha is the older son's childhood friend. Her father is the captain of the Riedelheim Knights. Roughly speaking, she got a job here through connections, and he's just a cat. It's very common for the daughters of lesser aristocrats to work in mansions so that they can get a proper education. Almost no one looks for maids specifically. Usually these jobs are provided through connections, such as relatives. Sasha noticed that the protagonist was watching her and asked him, "Is something wrong, Master Luke?" The cat hesitated. Oh no. He told her that she could just call him Luke. He was, after all, an ordinary pet. She grinned and asked, he was not her pet, but Lady Clarissa's pet, right? And she said that it would be more correct to address the cat as Sir. The cat thought, there was no arguing with that. Sasha continued, and also, how can I say, her intuition tells her that Mr. Luke is older than her. The protagonist was surprised. What a situation. Besides the fact that this is not only about Lady Clarissa, but also that he is far from an ordinary cat. He must prepare for such treatment in the future. He told Sasha that if she thought so, then she should call him as she liked. Especially since he was not really familiar with the foundations of this world. He hoped that he would be able to learn more. Sasha said that he could ask whatever he wanted. Her master asked her to do whatever the protagonist needed for convenience. Luke thought, so he now has 2 mentors, Sasha and Lilfley. He will be a useless pet if he does not know anything about this world. At least he does not want to just eat and sleep, but wants to be at least a little useful. He can bring new types of vegetables with the help of imitation, or he can look after the garden himself. He will feel guilty if he is the only one who eats delicious food. He must bring more delicious dishes to their dinner table. In the past world in ancient times there were people who called cats gods of fertility because they protected the harvest from rodents. Although he is not the goddess Bastet, he will become a preacher of the cult of tomatoes. He just needs to wean them off calling tomatoes signoro. Sasha asked Mr. Luke, by the way, does he not get tired when he walks only on his hind legs? The protagonist answered that in fact, it comes suspiciously easy to him. Even a cat is interested in the food of another world. Sasha led him to the kitchen. They were met at the door by the chef Heiser and his wife Romina. The chef was delighted. Oh, it's Luke. Romina asked, are you done eating? The protagonist replied, yeah, thanks for the delicious dinner. In fact, he wanted to know about the ingredients and seasonings they used. Heiser said, got it, and invited the cat to go into the kitchen. The cat agreed. Good. The chef of the mansion, Heiser, and his wife Romina, a happy couple. In addition, they have 3 children who are all independent and work in other places. Romina said, in my long life, I would never have thought that I would feed a talking cat. The chef asked Luke, by the way, does he have dishes that he doesn't like? The cat thought, I didn't think that such nice grandparents would cook for aristocrats. What a cozy atmosphere. Heiser said, so as for seasonings, the most important thing is salt. Without it, no dish will turn out well. Ordinary people use it in cooking every day. Luke thought, well yes, he clearly felt the salty taste. He asked the chef if there were any sweeteners. The cook reached into the cupboard and said, for sweetness, first of all, a mazura, something like syrup from mountain plants. A rather expensive and rare thing, bought only for special occasions. Luke remembered a mazura is syrup from mountain plants then. He heard that in history they made something like that. The chef continued, there's also maltose. Ordinary people almost never use it, mainly for desserts. The cat was happy, so it exists. So honey and other things exist too? Heiser was surprised, honey? No, they do not use such a dangerous thing. They cannot get rid of the poison even after heating. People will not eat it even if they are hungry. The cat was surprised, so honey is deadly here. The chef put the basket on the table, so on. If we talk about sweets, then we cannot fail to mention fruits. Fruits are used to make jam. The cat answered, I understand. Now he realized that there is no regular sugar in this world. You can use sugar beets, or try using cane sugar. True, he had never tried sugar beets, but once he tried a piece of sugar cane, maybe he could create it with the help of imitation. But the influence of sugar could be too strong. The magic of sugar could be even stronger than the power of tomatoes. Sugar is a kind of strategic resource. You can even start a war with it. Because of sugar, the colonial era began, slave labor appeared and other nasty things. He didn't want to bring that here. Okay, he decided that he wouldn't create sugar for now. Luke asked the chef to tell him more about seasonings. The chef said that there was no pepper. Besides, in other countries too. But there is wine vinegar, and there is mayonnaise. It is made from eggs, oil, and vinegar. By the way, this is the main use of wine vinegar. There are no tomatoes, therefore no ketchup either. There is chili pepper, but it is almost never used. There are no other food sauces either. There are also seasonings that the cat does not know. The cook put a spoon in the pot and said that the protagonist might like this. It is made from fermented beans. Soy sauce. Luke was happy. Soy sauce. They had such a thing in his country too. He asked if he could try a little. The chef asked, in the cat's country? He grinned and said, but the taste is rather bland. Heather handed the cat a fork with cheese and asked if this might be better. Cheese marinated in soy sauce. The cat was happy. A snack for alcohol. The protagonist tried a piece, delicious, rich cheese flavor and gorgeous saltiness. The chef said that he usually uses soy sauce for frying vegetables and grilling meat. He asked if they also use it in the protagonist's homeland. The cat confirmed. Yeah, Luke thought about it. It doesn't look like they make sashimi here. He asked, if there is soy sauce, then maybe there is miso? How about miso? Romina asked again, miso? She opened the tub and asked the cat, is this what he asked about? The cat exclaimed, this is red miso. She said the smell is very strong, that's why many nobles do not eat it. But those who do, spread it on meat or mix it with soup. The cat happily thought of meat with miso and miso soup. Romina continued, of course it is suitable for making stews. Also, some bake it with herbs to make snacks for alcohol. Luke was delighted, miso stew and miso grill. The chef summed up that they mainly use miso and soy sauce to cook for servants and soldiers. Even a small amount affects the taste, so the dishes are inexpensive. He asked if the protagonist would like something made from these ingredients. Luke agreed, of course. He would be looking forward to it. He decided he needed to think about it. The mayonnaise and soy sauce here clearly came from other time travelers who did not end up here in the form of a cat. There is no other way to explain the identical names, but they hardly had abilities like his imitation. Therefore, they could not create something that simply does not exist in this world. After analyzing everything, Kaido thought, did he get more amazing things than the others? Maybe it was some kind of mistake, incorrect adjustment? He hoped that in the future there would be no problems because of this. He mentally addressed the Lord Gods and Goddesses, saying that he was not going to give his abilities back. Clarice called out his name, and he happily greeted them. The girl came with her sister. Clarice ordered Sasha to heat the water. The protagonist was surprised. Water? Clarice told him that it was time to take a bath. He was happy about the upcoming procedure. Then he thought dejectedly that no one would drag him into the bathroom with the girls. Then he would somehow get here. Clarice picked him up and said that before they washed themselves, she needed to wash him first. Kaido asked again, him in the bathroom? In that case, let them prepare a basin of hot water for him, and he will wash himself. He did not want to disturb anyone. Sasha said in surprise he was clearly not tall enough to use the stove. The protagonist assured her that everything would be fine. As long as there was water, he could heat it up. Heather, Romina, and Sasha stared at him in amazement. Clarice answered him that then it would be as he wanted. The protagonist noted that he would only need a towel to dry himself off later. Lilfley put a vat of water for him. She asked him if this would suit him. He answered that it would suit him and thanked her for her concern. The protagonist knew that cats usually did not like baths, but he was a native Japanese. For him, a bath was a great way to relieve stress. He quickly climbed into the vat of water, saying that this is what he did. The girls watched him in amazement. At that moment, Sasha brought him towels. Having settled down in the tub, like in a bath, he closed his eyes and thought that he was alive again. The sky was strewn with stars. How good it was. The protagonist noted to himself that so much had happened. He thought about the girls, opened his eyes and told them that he was taking a long bath. They could leave. Then, when he was done, he would ask someone to clean up. Lilfly sat down next to him and said that she was interested in watching him. Clarice joined her, noting that she was also interested. The protagonist was surprised. Was this such an unusual sight? Sasha asked him in surprise, would he use the towel himself too? The protagonist assured her that he could handle that too, and he could also clean the water. After a while, having enjoyed the bath, he got out of the tub and shook off the excess water. Then, throwing a towel around his neck, he blissfully said how good it felt. He thanked everyone involved in his pleasure. Sasha took a tub of water and noticed that the water remained clean. The protagonist looked at her and noted that the girl wanted to say a lot. Lilfley asked him if she would help him dry himself. He could not deny himself such a pleasure. When the girl began to do this, he was happy. Mrs. Lilfley was drying him so thoroughly. He felt the happiest. She pressed him to herself, and he thought that he would stay in this position forever. The protagonist decided that he needed to calm down and thought about prime numbers. He needed to distract himself and remember the numbers that are divisible only by themselves in 1. What was it? 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Although these are just odd numbers, right? What are prime numbers then? At this moment, Clarice tore him away from his thoughts. She asked him if he could boil water so easily, would he be able to prepare a larger container of water for her? He chuckled to himself, and she quickly found how to use it. The thing is, heating water is a very labor-intensive process. Aristocrats like to take a bath in hot water. To do this, you need to spend fuel, and also carefully monitor the temperature of the water. If there were hot springs here, then of course the conversation would be completely different, and he just needed to control the temperature, which was quite easy for him. Maybe he should open a public bathhouse in the future? These were all his thoughts. Out loud, he answered his mistress that it was possible. The main thing was that she needed to pour water into some container. He asked her if there was something big for water. She thought about it and answered that there was a coffin. The main character was embarrassed and said that he refused this. It was not suitable at all. The thought popped into his head that she clearly had not thought through her idea. Lilfley grinned and replied that she would ask her uncle and he would get them a full-size bath. The protagonist looked at her and noticed how sweetly she smiled. She didn't think it would be difficult for him. The protagonist was delighted. She was smart. It was immediately obvious. It occurred to him that he could also make a drain for the water and at the same time a plug for the drain. To create a bathtub, you can use solid wood, brick, or stone. And with the help of magic, you can do something like waterproof treatment. Besides, if the girls are going to use it, then it can't be outside. He sighed dreamily. There were so many things he wanted to do. Just recently, he was wandering in the mountains. But now, he had a wonderful home. Feeling peacefully in the arms of his mistress, he decided that from now on he would enjoy the life of a pet. After the bath, it was already late, so the busy day came to an end. But not everything was so simple. The owner still had to decide where he would sleep. He noticed their thoughtful faces and said that if they would lend him a blanket, he could sleep in the corner of the hallway. Clarice told him that he would sleep with her. She was his owner. Rise thought with displeasure that he could not allow his daughter to sleep with such a strange and suspicious cat. Lilfley said that Luke had talent. She could teach him magic before going to bed. In the end, it was decided that he would stay to sleep with Clarice until she fell asleep. After that, he would go study magic with Lilfley. And where could he sleep? Well, he was a cat. Didn't he have the right to choose his own place to sleep? Having put the girl to sleep, he headed for the exit, looking at how peacefully she was sleeping. He thought that Clarice fell asleep rather quickly. He was worried that she would worry more. Fortunately, she fell asleep almost as soon as she got into bed. He went to study magic. The protagonist came to Lilfly's house and realized that he couldn't knock. He simply wouldn't be able to reach her. He would have to scratch at the door, which he did. Scratching the door, he greeted her loudly. The girl looked out, noticed that it was him, and invited him in. She was, in his opinion, in a very light suit, and he automatically noted her dazzling white skin, good abs, and beautiful figure. He immediately pulled himself up. He shouldn't stare like that. He's a gentleman. And besides, he's a cat. He shouldn't lose to worldly desires. Lilfly looked at him in surprise and asked if he was coming in. The protagonist came to his senses and went inside. Decisively stamping his steps, the protagonist thought that her behavior was also understandable. She was behaving this way because she thought he was a cat. He definitely shouldn't rely on what a person can count on. But it was still bad for his little heart. The protagonist asked her with concern, wasn't she cold? Maybe she should put something on top? The girl smiled. She thanked him for his concern and added that she had a high body temperature so she wouldn't freeze. She explained that the magical power inside the mage's body gives its influence. That's why they have a high body temperature. He noted that it was all clear to him. The protagonist thought, is this why mages in games always dress so lightly? But most likely it's just fan service. Lilfly said she was lucky that she had a talent for water magic. Thanks to this, she could easily cool her body. The hardest thing is for people who can only use fire magic. In especially severe cases, they end up bedridden due to the constant heat they feel. That's why mages, first of all, learn to control their body temperature. She asked him if he knew anything about it. He answered negatively. He knew nothing about it at all. He remembered that when he was going down the mountain, he did not feel either heat or cold. Although, maybe it was the fur or the resistance to all the elements. The girl suggested that he start with the basics. He settled down comfortably on the table and said that he was listening attentively. Lilfly said that as for him, he owned cat magic. She did not know it. Therefore, she did not think that all her knowledge would be useful to him. She would try to answer all the questions, but most often, it seemed, she would have to say that she did not know it. The protagonist noted that everything was clear to him and asked her his first question. He was interested in whether there was a way to control magical power. She answered him that there was. A person can unconsciously control the temperature of his body, but the flows of magical power can be felt during meditation. This will be the first step. The meditation itself is different, depending on the element of a person. MC noted to himself that she seemed to be having fun. She was smiling while telling him about magic. The girl gave an example. If his element is earth, then during meditation, he should be as steadfast as a rock. If his element is water, then he should be fluid like water. The element of fire suggests being energetic and sharp, and the element of wind, he should let his mind merge with the wind and dissolve in it. She was embarrassed and noted that she was supposed to teach him this further. But would she be able to? She knew nothing about cat magic, so she did not know what he should do. He wondered if maybe he needed to imagine himself surrounded by cats. His imagination vividly drew him a corresponding picture, and he noted that this was clearly not it. The girl continued that the thing was that it was clearly not only she who did not know anything about it. Even if you ask famous magicians, they would hardly answer. The protagonist thought that this was logical, but out loud he suggested that in that case they should put it off for now. Lilfly agreed. After that, they experimented with his imitation skill. It was very reminiscent of an association game, but they definitely confirmed that he could only imitate what he had eaten in his past life. As for associations, everything was very flexible. It could be one color, one shape, name, or composition. An approximate chain looked like this. The dish bûche de Noël in the dessert category turned into shortbread cake. In the white color category, into honey ice cream, then into rice, and then into sugar. Then salt turned into wheat flour, flour into bread, since it is baked from flour. But what about bread without butter? He managed to turn bread into butter. It was some kind of absurdity. But he couldn't immediately turn butter into a tomato. He only managed to turn butter into milk, milk into strawberry milk into strawberries, strawberries into tomatoes through a chain. To do this, he had to take several steps. In other words, he could use this skill to create any delicious thing, as long as his imagination was enough. The main thing was that the item matched the description of what he ate or drank. Therefore, he could not create a carved figurine or iron bars. Naturally, he would not create a firearm or a weapon either, otherwise it would be too much. But it would be cool to have something like a small truck. By the way, the vessel will not appear either, so you need to be careful not to splatter the room. He wiped his forehead with his paw and said something like this. The girl's brain seemed to boil. She noted in amazement that he really was a god. The protagonist protested. This is not true at all. He is not a god, he is just a victim of a divine game. Lilfly thoughtfully asked him why he came down to their lands at all. Wouldn't it be better to choose a temple or a capital? What was the point of descending on their god-forsaken territory anyway? The protagonist chuckled to himself. If only he had a choice. But out loud he said that he was an ordinary cat. It was just a coincidence. To be honest, he was just lucky that the wind spirit took him here. If it weren't for this fateful meeting, he would have died in the mountains. The girl noted in amazement that she definitely saw the wind spirit's blessing then. Did he really communicate with this creature? Kaido answered her that it was so. The spirit told him that only those with great magical power can communicate with her. If it weren't for her, he would never have gotten here. He is very grateful to her. MC asked her if she had ever communicated with her. Lil Flea was speechless for a second from his question, then answered him that she had never spoken to her. The protagonist, looking at the girl, began to think that spirits were very dangerous, and it was better not to talk to her about it. She noted that only a small number of mages can talk to spirits. As far as she knows, there are only 3 such people. They are the court mage named Lushan, his favorite student Aisha, and there is also a mage from another country named Sphere. He is from the Hort Empire, and he is known as the strongest mage. The main character, of course, did not know any of the named people. She continued, of course, she had not met any of them personally, but the point is that such people are not even in every country. The girl noted that if he said that he understood spirits, then he would immediately be taken to the royal palace. Kaito listened to her in surprise. This is an even rarer talent than he thought. The spirit of the wind, to be honest, it seemed to him that she was very good to people, or cats, but the very fact of their meeting was even more luck. Meanwhile, Lil Flea continued that she immediately noticed his title. They have a rather popular idiom in their culture. A journey guided by the spirit of the wind means that only good fortune awaits the guide on this journey. At least, that's how it was explained to her. The protagonist exclaimed, "An idiom." He had forgotten about their existence. The girl remarked that she didn't think he had met a real spirit of the wind. She was sure that her uncle would have been very surprised too. She stared at him in admiration. MC was embarrassed. Who would have thought that he was guided by such a great being? He would have to thank her properly the next time they met. He said, "As for these titles, what are they anyway?" He understood perfectly well that they were not something tangible, but he was just curious about how they worked. How do you get them? Does someone give them out, or how? The girl herself didn't fully understand what they were. More precisely, there are no specific studies that would study them. There is an opinion that they are given to them by higher beings, but there are titles that were clearly obtained differently. Did he understand where he got such titles from? He thought about his credentials. Hero Savior of Cats, Servant of Tomato, 3 classes of English, and Master of Udon. Hero Savior of Cats. He most likely received this title for saving a cat from a car. He received 3 classes of English thanks to the level of his knowledge of English. In his resume, he wrote that his level, of course, is higher, but in this world, it would not work. As for the Master of Udon, he used to have a part-time job in a noodle shop. Maybe because of that, he was even once offered to open a franchise of his own noodle shop. By the way, he really was good at making udon back then. There is no need to even talk about the blessing of the spirit of the wind and the servant of tomato. After his thoughts, he answered the girl that he has one title, Miracle Worker. He does not quite understand what it means, and he has no idea where it came from. Lil Fly replied that she also saw such a title for the first time. Almost all of his titles, except for the one blessed by the wind spirit, she sees for the first time. She is very sorry that everything is so complicated with her. She began to stroke his head and continued that titles are a very rare thing, but the same titles can be received by several people. This is no longer a rarity. However, the amount of information she has is very limited. The protagonist reassured her that everything is fine. She has nothing to worry about. She helps him a lot anyway. The girl noted that may be so. The protagonist continued that he was given all this by God when he came to this world. She removed her hand from his fur. He looked at her anxiously and asked if something happened. Luffy thoughtfully said, "If so, then shouldn't there be a suitable title?" Hundreds of years have passed since the invention of the magic mirror. Previously, titles could only be seen by spirits and some powerful skills. Among the known titles were the Messenger of Existence, the God of Wind Dancing in the Sky, the Blue Ocean. These are titles given to people who left a mark on history and mythology. If he had such a title, it would be proof of his divinity. The protagonist protested. No, he had nothing like that, and he did not need such a thing. He thought that the title Lottery Winner or something like that would be more appropriate. But it was better to leave everything as it was. Meanwhile, it was already deep night in the yard. The protagonist went home, saying goodbye to Lil Flea. She wished him good night. Walking through her garden, the protagonist thought that it was still a good day. Having come down from the mountains, he was still able to find a home for himself, which made him happy. He was doing quite well for his first life as a cat. If you think about it, then maybe all this is the tricks of that higher being. It turns out that she did a lot for him. He sat on his hind legs, folded his front paws in a prayer gesture, and addressed the great supreme being that sits somewhere far, far away in the heavens. He thanked her from the bottom of his heart. Suddenly, he felt a change in the aura around him, and in an instant, a white light appeared. He thought in bewilderment. He had just been in Mrs. Lilfley's garden, and now he was suddenly in a white space. And in general, this feeling that had overcome him seemed very familiar to him. The protagonist heard someone calling his name. The protagonist said that he had heard this voice before. Had the Supreme Being come to him again? At that moment, he was convinced of his assumption. Right before his eyes, this being appeared, sitting among the magic circles and system windows. The creature said in surprise. It was a bit early for him to return to her. The protagonist thought, did he close his eyes and fall asleep? Was there a higher being in front of him again? The creature waved at him and replied that it was, and greeted him. The protagonist noted, well, to be more precise, not a creature, but a higher kitty? She really was a cat. Kitty looked at the magic clock and asked him, had it only been 4 minutes since he landed? She addressed MC by his earthly name and noted that it was too fast. Then he exclaimed that he had a different name now. Luke, they gave him a good name. The creature continued, if we talk about a chess piece, he is a rook. He moves around the field without restrictions, crossing the field lengthwise and crosswise, and sometimes puts the king in a hopeless situation. Kitty thought about it and confidently concluded that this name definitely suits him, but still, he did not unite with the bears from the forest, and did not go to destroy humanity, although such was the plan. The protagonist was surprised what terrible things the Supreme Kitty was saying. It occurred to him to ask, why was he here? He was just in the garden, and looked at the stars. Kitty answered that he used the connection with Akasha. That is, he put his paws together and began to pray in the direction here, and then his consciousness was transferred here. Didn't she explain to him how it works? Kaido said that he heard about it for the first time. Connection with Akasha is what he thinks, something like a hotline that connects him and the Supreme Being. At that moment, he saw his characteristic in one of the system windows. It said that his cat magic is holy magic. He has susceptibility to all elements, is subject to influence on the mind. His abilities were imitation, connection with Akasha. His titles are Miracle Worker, Cat Hero Savior, Blessed by the Spirit of the Wind, Tomato Servant, 3 classes of English, and Udon Master. The cat protested. The skill of communication with Akasha is not as simple as he thinks. He was transported here because his prayer was directed at her. But this ability has other functions as well. This is the most advanced technology that they have recently started to use everywhere. And among all the reincarnated, he became the first to implement it. The protagonist thought indignantly, is he a guinea pig or something? And then he thought fearfully, what if the creature can hear him? If only he did not say anything unnecessary. The cat, meanwhile, continued that the connection with Akasha in this space is something like a liaison between him and the vast universe. However, his access level is still low, so the connection is limited. Akasha is a treasury of information, before which the wisdom of mankind is nothing. His skill is a fuse, so as not to go crazy from touching the deep knowledge. If he can't handle such a huge amount of information, his personality may collapse. This is a typical end for a final boss who craved wisdom too much. The protagonist thought that he should be very careful. Although, he is not the final boss, but just a cat. He asked the creature. She said that he was the first one who could realize this ability. He is not the only one reincarnated. In history, there were several people who came from the same world as him, only in human form. The cat spoke. Who knows? Their department mainly deals with cats. As for the reincarnation of cats and other animals, they organize their reincarnation in different worlds. And humans, judging by the reports, really get there through other routes. In different worlds, there are many races that can be mixed between worlds. Free agents who do not belong to organizations sometimes do something, and the locals take them for gods, demons, or aliens. Kaito was interested. Free agents? Kitty noted that there were a lot of them. For example, former magicians who accidentally reached the truth and surpassed humanity. Or stars that for some reason gained consciousness, or strange creatures that developed the ability to travel between worlds. Or infamous individuals who gained a little power and began to think of themselves as gods. Some of them are the result of their experiments, but most are not. The cat folded her paws in front of herself and noted what interesting creatures they were. MC replied that she sounded like a mad scientist. The cat came out of her state of admiration. She told the protagonist that one day, he too could become such a creature. Among those he mentioned, only a handful are able to use the connection with Akasha, and his ability, imitation, is also based on the connection with Akasha. The protagonist was amazed. How is this it too? The creature noted that everything he ever tasted was data that is in Akasha, and with the help of imitation, this data is extracted from there and then reproduced. The cat laughed and asked her charge, isn't it a convenient thing? Kaito admitted to her that he can turn firewood into a cake. This impressed him so much that it even scared him. He was also interested in whether there were any side effects in the form of traps or restrictions on the number of uses. The cat thought for a while, and then said that if you eat too much sweet, you can get fat, and if you eat too much salty, you can get high blood pressure. Something like this can happen. In fact, the ability simply recreates the data of what he once ate in its original form, so that the composition remains the same. You can experiment with the size, but if the difference between the original object and what it is transformed into is too great, then this is impossible. For example, you can't turn a small bean into a large watermelon, but you can turn a small watermelon into a large one. There are also no restrictions on the number of uses. The cat became embarrassed at this point and said that she had forgotten something. It was also impossible to recreate animals in a living state. For example, cows, birds, or fish could be recreated as raw meat before cooking, but not in a living state. And of course, recreated people was out of the question. MC sighed with relief. It was good that such dangerous situations as resurrecting the dead as food had been avoided. Although he had not even thought about it. The creature noted that, in essence, imitation was something like cloning technology through a connection with Akasha. But there was one problem that they had not yet been able to solve. When the noise of the subject's thinking got into the recreated process, it always ended in a 100% failure. In other words, any animal with a brain could not be recreated in a living state. It works with bacteria, viruses, or euglenas, but as soon as it came to ticks or similar creatures, it was no longer possible. This is a feature, or rather, a current limitation of the technology. The protagonist answered, although even in its current state, it could be called unfair play. Kitty agreed with him. It is for the same reason that it is impossible to use living animals as material, unfortunately. The protagonist thought that it was, on the contrary, more of a fuse. Out loud, he said, if you think about it, it is a truly incredible ability. Kitty admitted that the successful recreation in the material world was a big surprise for them too. And also, regarding the functions that are suitable for beginners and easy to use. Then the creature remembered something else and opened the magic chest, exclaiming, here it is. In her paws were 2 large books. One of them was an encyclopedia of animals, the second an encyclopedia of people. The protagonist was surprised. What is this? Kitty explained that with this, he can easily learn the abilities or character of people and animals he met. If he uses Akasha in its original form, the amount of unnecessary information will be simply enormous. What is presented here are only excerpts. Only he would be able to see this, so he didn't have to worry about anyone else seeing it. The protagonist opened one of them, the one about humans, and saw the name of his young mistress's sister. When he read the characteristics of her body structure, he couldn't believe his eyes. He thought, is this real? Does it work? He chuckled. For higher beings, the concept of personal space no longer existed. Huh? He looked at it again and turned away, thinking that it would be better if he didn't see it. But curiosity is not a vice, and he continued reading again. From what he read, he learned that Lilfli Riedelheim was 19 years old, a woman. Her physical strength was rated as D, combat power was E rank, intelligence B, magic power was rated B, leadership rated E, spirit D, cat power 92. Her abilities were water elemental B class and holy magic class C. The protagonist was surprised her indicators were lower than he thought. Kitty noted that for a human, she is quite strong. For most people, the average grade is D, which is a normal grade. E is already weak, and F is already considered disabled. C is not bad, B is excellent, A is an expert. With an S grade, he can be considered a mythical hero, but it is rare that someone can get an A or higher. The protagonist was surprised to note that in Lilfli's case, her intelligence and magic power were excellent. If there had been an appearance category, he would have boldly given her an S grade. And the fact that she has poor leadership is because she is shy. The Supreme Kitty noted that, in fact, there are many nuances here. The main thing he needs to remember is that D is the base. Therefore, magic power and intelligence at this level are impressive powers for a human, and cat power is quite high. MC hesitated. He thought of ignoring it, but his curiosity was too great, so he still asked the creature what cat power was. Kitty replied that it was a numerical value that showed affection for cats. So to speak, a pleasant bonus for him. If this indicator is low for a human, he will die a terrible death. Therefore, the higher, the better. The protagonist noted with a smile that they generally do whatever they want. In any case, the indicator is very useful. As with magical power, all the characteristics here are very versatile and can show a lot. She asked if he wanted to look at himself. He was also in the animal encyclopedia. The protagonist was not against it, although he thought that initially he was not an animal. The protagonist opened the page he needed and looked at his data as a cat. He was listed as a demigod, male. His quality ratings were as follows. Physical strength, D+, combat power D+, intelligence C, magical power S. Leadership C, spirit A, cat strength 74, cat magic S, holy magic S, dark magic S, resistance to all elements S, mental resistance S. He also had unique abilities such as imitation, connection with Akasha, King of Beasts, development of abilities. His statuses are miracle worker, servant of a tomato. The protagonist thought in surprise. He knew, of course, that he had remarkable characteristics, but he was still considered a newborn. What awaits him in adulthood? He asked the creature if there were pluses in his characteristics. What did this mean? Kitty explained to him that when a skill is not good enough for a higher rating, or not bad enough for a lower rating, then there will be either a plus or a minus. In principle, ratings can change. For example, thanks to the King of Beasts, physical strength and combat power can rise to A or S. The protagonist enthusiastically asked, does this mean that he can, after all, turn into some kind of tiger? Kitty answered that his appearance in this case will not change. The rage of the demigod, or the King of Beasts, is activated. In rage, he will become noticeably stronger. In essence, this is the berserker mode. He should be careful if he does not want to hook his own. After all, he would not want that, right? MC thought anxiously, is this such a dangerous thing? So, it's better not to use it under normal circumstances, right? He decided that it would be better to put it off for now. He looked at the book and noted that the rest of the ratings were about magic skills. Spirit A, that was also surprising. Kitty explained to him that it was the influence of mental resistance S. In general, it's funny, with such a high mental resistance, his spirit is only A, but he's a cowardly guy. At these words, the creature laughed. The protagonist was irritated and surprised. Cowardly? That was offensive. The highest Kitty continued that the rank of the characteristic is assigned based on many combined factors, so he should not rush to draw conclusions. As for his intelligence, he still has memories from his past life, but he should not forget that he still lacks basic knowledge about this world. That is why the overall rating is still at level C. Kitty added that if he uses the connection with Akasha and gives him some more time, he will reach level A in a couple of years. The protagonist thought about it. Roughly speaking, the average rating is more important here. But if everything is assessed on the average, then one should not make hasty conclusions. The creature added, to be honest, abilities are much more important than characteristics. But all this is secondary things. The most important is cat magic at S. The protagonist did not understand what it was at all. If only he knew how to use it. Then it was the turn of the higher being to be surprised. The cat goggled at him and asked, does he not know about cat magic? Didn't he even go to kindergarten? The protagonist muttered that he did, but they didn't teach it there. He thought with displeasure, what kind of kindergartens do they, higher beings, even have? The highest Kitty thoughtfully said that the humanity of his world was completely hopeless. In his past world, magic did not exist, right? But considering that their star was the sun, that's normal. She sighed and noted that there was nothing to be done about it. The protagonist was surprised at how much arrogance there was in this cat. The creature activated the system window, and just like at school, rang the bell for class. She proclaimed that the lesson was called Cat Magic for Dummies. Then the cat began to explain to the protagonist that cat magic is magic available to every cat. The higher the rating, the more effective the magic. Powerful, fast, and simply the best magic. Kitty asked him, does he know the fireball? Well, this fireball takes the form of a cat, and thus its power increases, and it becomes homing. Just the main thing is to imagine that he is launching a fire cat. There are also ice cats and thunder cats. The main thing is just to imagine. Even considering his features, he can handle it and will be able to master everything quickly. He just needs to try. Kaito noted that it sounded cool. He seemed to have figured it out. He could drop in on her again if he used the Akasha connection. Kitty replied that, in general, she was not against it, but it would be better for him not to drop in on her too often. Did he understand that? Time flows completely differently here and there. Here, they chatted with him for about 7 minutes, right? So, a week had passed from below. The protagonist was surprised. How was that possible? He thought that such things could even lead to a heart attack. He could not believe that the difference was so huge. Seriously? A week? He was lying there? What about Clarice and Lilfly? What about the tomatoes? The protagonist told the creature that it was time for him to go back. Finally, he asked her what was happening to his body all the time. Was it okay? The cat matter-of-factly noted that while he was here, his body was simply in a state of sleep. He could not turn back time. The probability of success was ridiculously low, and in case of failure, the entire universe would come to an end. She added that, besides, the lifespan of the world in which he, the protagonist, lived had not yet been determined, which meant that it would live for about 20 billion years. But if he really wanted to, he could try. True, he would have to write an explanatory note later, and she was too lazy to do that. Kaito was amazed. All that was needed for that was an explanatory note? Then there was no need to do that. Let her just tell him how to go back. There was no need to return anything. He said in a panic that Clarice was probably crying bitter tears there right now. Of course, the pet she found had fallen into a coma. He would have cried too. He felt sorry for her, and mentally asked his young mistress to hold on. A black hole suddenly appeared in space. The cat pointed at it with her paw and said that the exit was there. She said goodbye to her charge and warned him that they, creatures, work in shifts. Therefore, next time there could be someone else in her place. In the end, the cat wished him to enjoy his cat life. The main character said goodbye to her and dived into the hole. When he opened his eyes, he realized that he was lying on a soft bed under a blanket. He thought in surprise, is this Clarice's bedroom? Finally, he was back. MC looked around and saw frozen tomatoes on the table. He thought in surprise, were these tomatoes frozen for him? So to speak, for a snack? He jumped out of the basket and approached the sleeping Clarice. Looking at her, he noticed with affection how sweetly she snored in her sleep. The protagonist noticed that Lilfly was sleeping next to her. He thought, is she sleeping too? Clarissa was lonely, so they slept together? Or were they so worried about him? The protagonist listened to himself. He slept for 7 days, but did not feel any problems in his body. But his nails had grown. He needed a scratching post. He sat down on the floor and thought about what he should do. Both of his favorites were sleeping. He couldn't wake them up in the middle of the night. He jumped onto the table near the window and gazed at the starry night sky. Thoughts came to his mind that there were 3 moons in this world, a large one, a medium one, and a small one. The spirit had named them the first moon, the second, and the third. She also said that the largest moon was the closest to this planet, and the smallest moon was the farthest away. He thought that if he looked closely, the first moon might not be a moon at all. Its surface was too smooth. Maybe it was a spaceship that was observing this world. As soon as he looked at the night sky, he was immediately overcome with nostalgia for home. Although, to be honest, it's not that big. He lost his parents early and was raised by his grandparents. And then they passed away too, 4 years apart. He had many friends who were there for him, even when he cried all night. He knew that during the day he had those who supported him. Later they hardly communicated, but he remembered those days with warmth. But, although he missed the past world, he did not want to go back there again. It was much more interesting here, and the cat's body turned out to be very comfortable. And also, he has 2 cuties, 2 favorites, Clarice and her sister. Next to them, he has a desire to live. He emotionally gestured in parallel to his thoughts. At that moment, Lilfly woke up and called out to him in surprise. He waved his paw at her with a smile and greeted her. He wondered what was better, hello or good morning. Although, the hour here is quite late, you can't call it morning. The girl happily grabbed him in her arms and hugged him, exclaiming his name. She cried and thanked God that Luke opened his eyes. He was embarrassed that the girl was crying so hard. The protagonist apologized to her and said that, in fact, he was communicating with a higher being. Lilfly, sobbing, said that he was sleeping and sleeping and sleeping all the time. He thought with embarrassment that this was serious. Of course, he was prepared for Clarice's tears, but he didn't think that her sister would cry too, and so hard. At that moment, Clarice woke up too. She sat up in bed and rubbed her sleepy eyes with her hand. She turned to her sister and noted that she had told her that Luke was a demigod. His sleep could be different from a human's. She didn't need to worry so much. Everything was fine. Lilfly, still hugging the protagonist, tried to say something through her tears, but she was having trouble doing it. He felt bad. It seemed that in the end, he had injured not his mistress, but her sister. The girl came up to them, sat down next to him, and greeted him. He warmly wished her a mutual good morning. In the end, Lilfly cried for another hour, and he and Clarice comforted her. His conscience tormented him very much. It had been a long day, or rather, a long week in this world. Luke said that he had communicated with the goddess for 7 minutes, and here during this time, 7 days had passed. That's all. He thought that he would miss the part that she was in the form of a cat. It was better for them not to know. Clarice took him in her arms and asked if he had met her. Then did he know why she gave him this power? MC replied that this was his assumption, but all for the sake of an experiment. What would he do? What could he achieve? She wanted to watch him. He thought he was right? She didn't look like she cared about this world, and the fact that divine power was interfering with the life of this world. The protagonist added that she needed observations purely to kill time. That was his assumption. He thought that he had just come up with it now, but it wasn't that far from the truth. But if you think about it, such an attitude of higher beings is very selfish, isn't it? Clarice said that she didn't really care about the goals of the gods, but she knew that their gift to him was given to them. That was important to her. What is a gift anyway? It's something that is usually given for free. So you can just not think about it, right? Of course you need to appreciate it, but it's enough to just enjoy it, and the goal is no longer so important. She thinks that he is free. Let him enjoy life, spend his free time as he wishes. MC looked at his paws and thought, it doesn't matter why he is here, but what does he want to do, right? He wants to be useful to Clarice and the Riedelheim family, to lead tomatoes to greatness. He wants to create an environment around himself where he can sleep as long as he wants. How long do cats live anyway? This is his second life. So he wants to live a calm and leisurely life. Clarice called out to him and noted that as an apology, he owed the cake. MC replied that it was not the best dish for a late snack. If you eat this at a late hour, then can they free up a plate? They will eat something lighter. strawberries and fluffy waffles. He thought that he made this dish from tomatoes on ice, which look like strawberries because of their red color. But it seems that they liked it. What is he trying to hide? In the past world, he had a sweet tooth. Financially, he could not afford sweets all the time. But he tried everything in his friend's pastry shop. He periodically liked to buy himself something so expensive and delicious. Strawberry waffles are one of his favorite sweets. The smile returned to Lilfly's face. Great. He had to protect that smile. He had to protect it. He didn't want her to turn into a yandere. He would have to seriously monitor her psychological state. After all, his yandere radar was going through the roof. She would go into full-blown yandere mode. Come to think of it, that radar saved his life in his past life. First, he shows affection, and then he turns away from them, and that's it. His life is over. No, he's already thinking nonsense. The protagonist noted that he also needed to apologize to Mr. Rise. He was worried. Clarice replied that there was no need. Her father left the next day on business, so he wasn't home. 2 days one way, that is 4 days there and back. He planned to stay there for 3 days, so he would be back today or tomorrow. That's why he didn't know that he had been sleeping all this time. Her father was often away. The protagonist asked. He was very busy, right? Lilfly explained that an epidemic had recently spread in the area. The population of all ages and genders had been greatly reduced. Her parents and siblings had died from the epidemic, so she could only rely on her uncle. She was young at the time and was so relieved when she returned home. There was also an older son, Claude, in the family, but he was studying at the military academy in the capital and did not have much time to return home. MC thought that he was studying military affairs to become a worthy successor. If he returned, he would have to greet him properly. Sometime later, at the kitchen table, the protagonist thought that one more was missing. At first, he thought that maybe she was just not at the dinner table. Clarice said in a lost voice that her mother was sick, so she did not live here. When she recovered, he would meet her. The protagonist happily exclaimed that he would wait for that day. He thought, even though he said it, you can tell from her face that she's not doing so well. I wonder if he can do anything? Wow, it's already dawn. Before Sasha wakes them up, they decide to go to bed. In the morning, MC thought that Mr. Rise should return home tonight, so the servants are busy with work, and he decided to check the human encyclopedia in his free time. First, he'll look at Clarice and Rise. What were their ranks? D, normal, C, slightly better, B, excellent, A, master, S, hero, right? The protagonist opened the book and saw their characteristics. He thought that her physical strength and combat power are low because she's still a child. Although he should most likely be higher, Clarice is very smart. And he also sees for the first time here, she has negotiations, and Rise has spear skills, archery, business skills, politics. It's unlikely that these are some kind of unique abilities. But if it is stated here, then they should be taken into account in these areas. And his grades are also high. Considering that the Supreme Being highly rated Lilfly, then Rise turns out to be very good too. In addition, he's good at many things. A promising aristocratic military man? Maybe such a career would suit him better? And is his cat strength low because he loves dogs? We need to raise this point. There are the stats of the servants, all of them are about D or C, and many have housework, CB. But with magic and combat, they are clearly not very good. The grades are low, but in principle it will do, right? MC looked at Sasha's stats and thought that she was a real battle maid. Maids who also serve as good bodyguards are a great option for aristocrats. He hadn't thought about it before, but she was supposedly the daughter of the Knight Commander. No wonder she is like that. He cannot cross her path. But if his daughter is so capable, then what kind of father is he? I wonder what kind of person he is. After a while, Rise told Yold about the main character. He said mockingly that it was stupid. Yes, he perfectly understands that he is not joking like that, but still, it sounds funny. And what is he like in life? He replied that he does not really know anything about him yet. He came to his house the day before his departure. But as long as he sits at home and does not cause him trouble, he will resign himself. Yold asked if since he told him this, he will be able to get to know him? Rise agreed and asked, they have not had dinner yet, right? So they will have dinner at their house. He said with a smile that it will only make him happy. After a while, MC looked out the window and seeing the carriage noticed that Mr. Rise had returned safely. He called out to Clarice and reminded her of the situation when he was sleeping. She said that she thinks that Sasha has already reported to him. The main character agreed and thought he does not think that her father would think that he was in a coma for 7 days. They entered the room and Rise noted with a smile that it was him. It was Luke. And this is his old friend and the commander of their knights, Yold. During this trip, he accompanied him and protected him. He said with a smile that he should just call him by his name. He was glad to meet this cat. MC thought in admiration that this was Sasha's father. He said that he was very pleased to meet him. He was Clarice's pet. His name was Luke. Yold called out to Rise in surprise and shouted that it was amazing. A talking cat. So he was also intelligent. Let him forgive him, it was rude. He just didn't believe him when he told him about him on the way. He hoped that he was not offended by his behavior. The protagonist answered with a smile that he understood his confusion perfectly. He wondered why this man called the Viscount by just his name. He should check the human encyclopedia. The others do not see it, so it will not look strange. He opened the page with Yold, and seeing his stats, thought in surprise that he had stats with an A grade. In other words, he is very strong. And also, this is the first title a person has. Seriously, what does that even mean? Even the way he stands, it's as if he has no weak points. No, he doesn't have some ability that can determine this, but he can see with the naked eye that he can't be caught off guard. Yold turned to him and said that he should introduce him to his wife. She's currently away, but as soon as she finishes business with the weaving workshop, she'll come visit. MC happily agreed and added that he should definitely introduce them. By the way, he seems to be well acquainted with Mr. Rise. Maybe they went to the same school? The Viscount explained that he came from a family of merchants. No one sent him to a military academy. Yold was a caravan guard that he hired. Because he was so good, he was able to become a Viscount, and he also taught him how to fight. MC was surprised to think that the master's mastery of a spear and archery came from him. Rise added that when he was still a simple merchant, they were brothers-in-law. At that time, he did not even suspect that he would inherit the title of Viscount. Yold noted that he was also surprised. He thought that he could enjoy life working for a simple merchant, but now he is a knight captain with a ton of work. At least he got to meet a talking cat. Can't complain, right? The protagonist thought that it seems that he is a person that people like. At first glance, he seems rude, but behind this there is a kind heart and great charisma. Now it makes sense why Mr. Rise keeps him around. After a while, MC thought that the dinner that day was more abundant than last time. Perhaps it is in honor of the return of the master. The roasted venison was especially good. In addition, the dishes were prepared using soy sauce. Sasha silently gave him another portion. Although he could imitate it with the help of imitation, it is still nice that such care is shown to him. After some time in the Viscount's office, he noticed that the business negotiations had gone well. But he again noticed the weakness of the craftsmen in their territory. In the county, the pottery town of Gallico and the textile town of Rudai have a highly specialized craft in which craftsmen compete with each other in skills, which has a good effect on the products. Compared to this, they do not produce anything special. But he would like to export something special from their territory. The goods that Lilfley produces are too limited, and the locals can also make them. Perhaps it is worth considering the option of exporting agricultural products. Luke approached Mr. Rise with a proposal to consider the possibility of selling Signoro Pomodoro. Of course, only after confirming their safety. They are easy to grow and the harvest will be plentiful. They are the perfect ingredient for cooking. This is a great opportunity to push tomatoes. MC was indebted to them when they saved him from starvation, but with the spread of tomatoes, many things will appear. There is ketchup, meat sauce, tomato stew, bouillabaisse, tomato risotto. Tomato will bring many flavors. What other vegetable is so wonderful? Tomato can be used as a seasoning, not just an ingredient. How many things can be created from it through association? In his past life, he completely gave up alcohol, women, and smoking. In return, he never denied himself food. With imitation, he can fulfill all his dreams in this world. Rise said that the fact is that the servants have already recommended tomatoes. Not much time has passed, but nothing has happened to them. The volunteers rated the tomatoes as excellent. They said that they should be used, but they know almost nothing about this vegetable. As for growing and cooking, they can only rely on Luke. Rise said that there will be a lot of work, but he hopes for MC's help. The protagonist replied that he would be happy to help. Yold asked, "Signoro Pomodoro, are these red balls that have changed shape? Why did this plant start growing in the field?" The harvest of this fruit was very large. Rise replied that they had already collected everything, but new green fruits were growing in their place. Luke thought about the fact that not only the fruits had changed, but the plant itself as a whole. In other words, he can sell pepper too, but he can't overdo it so as not to attract the attention of other aristocrats. He thought about the fact that he cannot hide his abilities from Mr. Rise. Although he does not ask the protagonist questions yet, he has already begun to have suspicions. As Kaido's late grandfather used to say, secrets can create misunderstandings. If there is no desire to harm, then you just need to tell the truth to the people you care about. Luke turned to Mr. Rise. He said that in fact he needed to tell something. He still lacked knowledge, so he would speak from his guesses. Rise said that he was listening carefully to Luke. The protagonist thanked him and said that first of all, he wanted to say that he was silent because he thought that they would not believe him. When he was sent to this world, he met a goddess. Then he himself did not really understand everything, but he was given a special gift. He realized this when Mrs. Lilfley used a magical assessment. The details of his features were not known to him. Just recently, during a dream, he met the goddess again and communicated with her. Then he learned all the details. Rise abruptly stopped his story. He asked if it was really possible to meet a goddess like this. Luke said that he decided to skip some details. He didn't meet a goddess exactly. It was some kind of employee who sends the deceased to other worlds. She was the one who sent him here. She was in the form of a cat, because she only works with cats, the cat god. And they work in shifts there, so next time he might meet a different god. Rise was surprised. In shifts? He didn't understand anything. Rise asked Luke about him being a messenger of God. MC answered that it was wrong. That's why he kept silent, to avoid such misunderstandings. Luke tried to explain it differently. He said that if a person meets a king, he doesn't become his servant, does he? It's a similar rule here. The goddess wished him a good cat life, but in fact, she simply sent him to this world. Clarice said that he was not a messenger of the goddess, but someone she simply helped. If you need to explain it differently, then simply an acquaintance of the goddess would be best. Luke said how smart Lady Clarice is. In reality, everything is much more complicated, but this is the simplest option. He is a test subject. He is in this world because they want to see how he will use the abilities they gave him. Yold asked what is the connection between the goddess and tomatoes? Luke thanked Yold for reminding him of the essence of the conversation. There is a connection. His ability is that he can imitate what he ate in his past life. It can be fruits, vegetables, and desserts. It is a recreation or something similar. Rise thought about it. Luke said that there are conditions that he must adhere to. The tomato in question is the result of him changing the shape of the red balls. If he finds an association, he can change the shape of any object. Yold asked Luke not to be offended, but if he has such an ability, then people will consider him a creator of miracles, and they will call him a god. Luke said that he understands this, but he is not a god, he is just a cat. He cannot become the god of the new world. Even with the abilities he has, he is still an ordinary cat. At the moment, he did not want to abuse his abilities. Clarice said that Rise and Yold would not believe it until they saw it. Her eyes were full of anticipation. Luke was full of confidence. He said that it would sound presumptuous, but he would make dessert for them. He asked Sasha to bring the necessary ingredients. She brought all the vegetables he asked for. Luke thanked Sasha. For starters, he decided to use orange radishes. Orange radishes look like carrots, but are the size of radishes. They have a light taste, a little watery, but at the same time have a citrusy taste and a slight sweetness. There are many types of local radishes: red, white, black, pink, and sweet. Red radishes have a strong spicy taste. White radishes are almost the same. Black radishes are tasteless but healthy. Pink radishes are simply beautiful. Sweet radishes are very sweet and expensive because they only grow in a few regions. Luke did not know where they came from, but there are still many varieties of radishes. Yold asked about putting radishes on the plate. Luke agreed. He would change this orange radish right now. He closed his eyes and simply imagined the dish. Imitation happened. Rise and Yold looked closely at the plate. After the change, a pear cheese tart appeared on it. Everyone was silent, and only Rise asked, "Is this a pastry?" Luke explained how he transformed the radish. Orange radishes into an orange, it into a pear, and then a pear cheese tart. Something like that. It is much easier to do everything through colors. Luke suggested cutting and trying the tart. Sasha asked Mr. Rise for permission to try the tart. Luke knew that girls like sweets. He planned to improve relations with Sasha, and this is the best way. He tried this pear cheese tart, not in a pastry shop, but in high school. Before the typhoon, his friend, a local farmer, bought several dozen unripe pears. Unsweet pears were hard to sell, so he suggested making pear desserts. With the help of the teacher, they advertised the desserts on social media. Luckily, they managed to sell everything. Luke hoped that everyone would like the taste he remembered. Rise said he would try it. He broke off a piece of the dessert with a fork and chewed. Yold looked at his friend, waiting for a reaction. Rise asked what kind of sweet cheese it was. The taste was soft and rich. He couldn't remember the last time he ate something like that. Yold shouted that it was delicious, and told Sasha to find out how to make it. Sasha was at a loss for words. She muttered that it was sweet, delicious, but what is it? Clarice told Lil that it was delicious, and Lil agreed with her. Luke exhaled. The magic of sweetness worked. Lady Lilfly and Lady Clarice liked his previous desserts, but they were trying the rest for the first time. Luke said that this dessert was made from a fruit called a pear. He doesn't know if there is such a fruit in this world, but it usually ripens in the fall. He also used a tart base. Yold said they don't have that. The dough can only be bought in very expensive stores in the capital. Luke remembered that there is no sugar in this world. Rise said that the filling is amazing. Something white inside? Something like cheese? He couldn't believe that the dish contained fruits from another world. He didn't remember tasting the dough. Luke said that Rise guessed right. One of the ingredients was cheese. It was a mixture of cream cheese and fresh cream, and the fruit adds sourness. They will be able to produce cheese on a local farm, but the texture will be a little different. Luke thought about the fact that there is still no sugar. He doubted that there are flavors and stuff too. He told everyone to forget about the tart. His task was to show off his abilities. He asked that everyone was convinced now. Rise apologized and said that he was very impressed by the taste. MC said that he would like to continue the conversation about the tomato. It was his fault that all the red balls were replaced with tomatoes. They shouldn't be dangerous. He thinks it's better to keep his powers a secret, or tell only his closest ones. Yold said he understood everything. Telling him and his daughter was already reckless. He asked Rise what he himself understood, what would happen when it was discovered. Because of Luke's powers, a war could start. Luke was surprised. War? It was not an exaggeration, because imitation has great potential. With its help, you can control the economy. Luke explained that he had not told anyone about this yet. But among the sweets he tried, some of them had gold leaf. He had never eaten gold bars, but according to the rules, he can create them. In large quantities, in solid form. He will definitely succeed. Luke admitted that he tried to do it, but quickly rolled it up, and it is better for no one to know about this at all. Rise agreed. He said that this should be kept secret from outsiders. It all depends on how to use Luke's power. Clarice asked her father to remember the existence of legends. How does it all work there? Rise understood what his daughter was talking about. People who try to use God's miracles end up sadly. She asked her father about the fact that he understands that he is at a crossroads. Will he be able to become Luke's friend or the one who perishes? Luke clarified whether Lady Clarice is really 9 years old. Did she happen to be reincarnated with memories from her past life? Clarice asked her father if he understood what she was trying to say. She said that the only right thing to do was to let Luke do what he wanted. They could ask him for help or advice. But if their father wanted to use him by force, then Luke would probably just leave them. If he wanted MC to help, then he shouldn't try to use his power. That could lead him astray. Luke said that Lady Clarice scared him, but he agreed with her words. It was necessary for his peaceful life above all else. He wanted Rise to help spread the tomato. As for the rest, Clarice had a point. They needed to think carefully about how to use his powers. He didn't know this world very well and knew practically nothing about the possibilities. Rise replied that he would keep his interference to a minimum. First and foremost, he was just Clarice's pet. Luke was glad that his tactic had worked. He hoped that Rise wasn't angry. He noticed that Rise couldn't stop his hands from shaking. Was the little girl really that scary? Luke reassured himself that this was necessary so that Rise would understand the danger of his abilities. To be honest, imitation could be used in war. It was literally a source of endless food, as well as a huge impact on the economy. In addition, he could change the soil around him, the stones, and the landscape in general. This could change the course of any battle or siege. If any of the military aristocrats found out about his ability, then a terrible future awaited him. Therefore, it was better to try not to stand out. In addition, he did not want to get into experiments, otherwise there might be people willing. But he still planned to develop the local cuisine. He wanted more different dishes. And he would also treat Mrs. Lilfly and Lady Clarice with sweets. In his past life, he was popular with girls, but now that was impossible. Luke turned to Rise and said that Lady Clarice wanted to take a hot bath. But for this, the bath itself was needed. Rise was surprised. To do this, you need a good fire mage or hot springs. It was too difficult to pull off. Usually, only the highest-ranking aristocrats could maintain such a thing. Luke said that he could leave the water to him. He could make hot water out of any water. Rise was surprised that even that was possible. He asked what to do with the used water later. Luke happily replied that it was no problem. He could make clean water out of it. If necessary, he could evaporate it and make it liquid again. Rise said that he understood everything and was leaving it all to him. He asked what was needed from him. Luke quickly got down to business. He said that in order to install a bath, it was necessary to make at least a small hut. He saw a suitable place not far from Mrs. Lilfly's house. Luke asked if there were any craftsmen capable of building a hut there. Rise asked if that was really enough. The protagonist replied that he had already discussed everything with Lil. All that was needed was a small house. Mrs. Lilfly helped plan the bath, and with her ability it would be possible to make a whole system. Rise replied that he would call the craftsmen from the city. He asked if a negotiator was needed. Lil replied that she would handle it herself. There was no need to bother someone else. Rise replied that he would leave it to her. Luke said that he did not really understand architecture and there was no point in talking to others. Protagonist wondered if Lady Lilfly was very shy. Should he leave it to her? But when he raised his head, he saw Clarice's gaze and realized that they had already discussed this issue. In fact, Lady Clarice would be communicating with the builders, and Leal said so to convince Mr. Rise. It was good that they had advanced this idea about using divine power. Once again, Luke was convinced that Lady Clarice was an extremely smart girl. This was to be expected from his mistress. He was proud that he was her pet. She had achieved the fact that he could do whatever he wanted, and no one would order him around. It was a great environment for him. Step by step, he was getting closer to a comfortable life. The weather was nice, and Luke decided to take a walk. He met Mr. Yold and wished him a good morning. Yold greeted Mr. Luke and clarified that he was without Lady Clarice today. MC thought about how Yold only addresses Viscount Rise by his first name, but always addresses Clarice as Lady. Now he also added Sir to his pet. He must be a very polite person. Luke asked about Yold having a lot of things to do today too. Yold asked again, today? He replied that he wouldn't say that. He was just thinking about training his subordinates and asked if Luke wanted to join in. The protagonist politely declined and said that he was planning to spend the day with Lady Clarice and Mr. Rise. Yold thought about it and said that he was curious about something. He asked if Luke would have time to chat. MC agreed. They went out into the field and Yold said that here they could talk away from prying eyes. Yold asked Luke to answer him honestly. After all, he was stronger than him? Luke wondered what they were talking about, considering his combat characteristics and Mr. Yold's A-rank skills, which were on a completely different level. Therefore, he could not compete with him. Luke replied that he was weaker than a child and did not have the strength in his paws to lift a weapon. Yold agreed, but said that MC could always use magic. Of course, he had combat experience and he could determine the potential strength of an opponent by eye. He called Luke a real monster and said that his strength was very close to divine. He could not call the protagonist a god. Most likely he was his relative. Luke thought about the fact that Yold had a piercing gaze, and this was not indicated in the encyclopedia. Yold said that there was something divine in the appearance of a cat. No matter how he tried to ignore it, he felt a lot of pressure from MC from the very first meeting. To be honest, he was very scared then. If a battle had broken out there, he was absolutely sure that he would not have been able to protect Rise and the others. Luke couldn't think that he, a small cat, could scare anyone. He said that Yold was wrong. He had recently shown that his magic was creating delicious food. Did he really make him angry with that? In any case, Luke decided that he was not going to become his enemy. Yold said that maybe he was hiding his powers, but it couldn't be helped. In any case, he wanted to protect Mr. Rise and the others, so he wanted to know about Luke's abilities. He asked if the protagonist could show at least a little magic, for example, on a stone that he took from the ground. Yold would throw the stone as far as possible, and Luke would try to use magic. He wanted to understand what Luke was good at: fire magic, wind magic, or water magic. Luke knew that cat magic for dummies, but the Supreme Being said that it was worth trying. MC agreed to the experiment. Yold was about to throw the stone. Luke stopped him and asked him to do it after the count from 10. Yold agreed to this condition, and Luke began to count 10, 9. Cat magic, cat magic. The protagonist tried to imagine something in the shape of a cat. If he uses fire, then a fire can start, 8, 7. If lightning, then the sound will be too loud, 6, 5. You can use the wind to change the trajectory of the stone, but it is too easy, 4. Ice can be too dangerous, 3. He does not have to destroy the stone, 2. Luke decided what force to use, 1. Yold threw the stone high into the sky. MC mentally imagined a cat. Cat magic, stone cat. Luke stretched his paw up and meowed loudly. A stone in the form of a stone figurine of a cat fell from the sky of the ground. Yold shouted that a cat climbed out of the stone. It was a huge statue in the shape of a cat. How could a small stone turn into such a gigantic statue? Yold charged at the huge living figure of the cat. He swung his sword to strike, but the blow broke the sword in half. Yold did not understand what had happened. Luke thought that such a good sword was broken by a cat. He ordered the stone cat to stop and return to its original form. The cat meowed and turned back into a small stone. Yold and Luke exhaled. The protagonist asked about how expensive this sword must have been. How many cat lives would he have to work off now? Yold knelt down and apologized to Luke for wanting to test his abilities. He admitted that it was stupid of him, but he did not expect something like this. He realized that with such power, Luke could easily take all these lands for himself if he wanted, and there was no point in doubting it. Yold hoped that Luke would be able to forgive him. The protagonist himself began to apologize. He did not understand why Yold's behavior was constantly changing. Luke admitted that it happened by accident. He just wanted to turn the stone into a cute cat. He would play a little and show that Luke is harmless, and he is not quite used to using magic, so he is very sorry that he broke someone else's sword. Yold said that the sword was indeed broken, but it was made of padur ore. The protagonist asked if it was expensive. Yold answered that it was not very expensive, but not very cheap. Luke exhaled and said that his conscience would torment him if it was a keepsake or from his father. Yold said that this ore allows you to create a sword that is needed to fight magic. From a strong blow with magic, it should bend, not break. It becomes soft, like a rope. It is inconvenient to use as a weapon, but given its lightness, it is often used in self-defense. In other words, the sword bends and practically does not break. Breaking it with one blow is essentially an impossible task, especially if this one was normally magical. Luke realized that now he looks damn strong because he can easily single-handedly destroy a squad of knights. A real monster. They both sat silently on the grass. Yold said that he was a fool, although he immediately realized that he could not defeat the statue. But as the guardian of this estate, he wanted to ask who this cat was. Why did he come here? What was he going to do? Luke understood his worries and decided to answer honestly. He said that he was from another world. He did not have any specific goal. If he had to choose, he would like to live and not worry about anything, and he would like to expand the local cuisine, starting with tomatoes, and he would also like to relax in the bath. Yold laughed. He apologized to Luke and said that even if he had the opportunity, MC was not going to use this power. A sage understands when more is not needed. Peace and tranquility are closer to him. Luke completely agreed with this. He is a simple cat. Yold said that Luke also wanted to ask something. MC apologized for forgetting about it. The stone cat distracted him from his thoughts. The thing is, he would like to meet one person. She is the wife of Viscount Rise and the mother of Lady Clarice. Yold asked again, does Luke want to see Rise's wife? Luke replied that he had heard about her illness, but he wanted to see her. Besides, the mistress had little free time, and he also wanted to surprise her. Yold asked, a surprise? Luke said, maybe he could cure her? Yold was very surprised. Was that possible? The protagonist said that he wanted to answer in the affirmative. If it was an illness that was in his world, then perhaps it would work. But he wouldn't hold out much hope. Yold asked about the reason Luke was asking him about it. He could have asked Lady Lilfley about it. Luke replied that Lil wasn't a very good liar. When Yold said that MC was the same, he thought about it. He really tried to lie only at the beginning. Yold clarified that all that was required of him was for him to introduce him to Lady Vertell. The protagonist clarified, was that possible? Yold said that he would organize it without any problems. Luke smiled at the information that Rise's wife was named Lady Vertell. It sounded like a boy's name, but that didn't matter. Yold picked Luke up and they set off for home. He said it was a 20-minute walk to the city. From there, it was another 30 minutes to Lady Vertell. She had hidden as far away as possible so as not to infect Lady Clarice. She had isolated herself from everyone on purpose. He knew where she was now, but the door would most likely be locked. Luke asked what about her daily needs. Yold replied that the townspeople and servants brought her groceries 2 or 3 times a week. He personally delivered her clothes and bedding. But even then, Lady Vertell told him to leave everything at the door and would not come out until he left. Luke asked if she had any permanent servants with her. Yold replied that she did not. Besides, she was from a family of merchants, so she could take care of herself. She was a commoner who later inherited the title of Viscount. MC wondered what Lady Vertell was doing cooking and doing the housework by herself. He thought she was in a bad way. Yold called out to Lady Clarice and Lady Lilfley. Lilfley said she was finishing the bathroom plan. Clarice asked Yold what was wrong. Luke smiled and said they were going to have lunch together in the city. Clarice said she would go too. Yold said it was no place for a Viscount's daughter. Luke asked him to show him his favorite restaurant, and the food there was very spicy. Clarice was upset, but wished them luck and waved. Luke thought even she got discouraged sometimes. Lilfley said she also didn't like spicy food, and she didn't really want to walk around the city. Luke asked Lilfley if she sold ice in the city. Lil replied that in such cases she takes servants and more guards with her. Yold clarified that such a good mage was always under the gun of kidnappers. Of course, rarely would anyone dare to harm the family of the ruler of the lands, but it would still be better not to leave together once again. Luke was surprised that magicians in this world are really valuable. He decided to leave the girls a sweet gift. A couple of movements, and from one log a bûche de Noël was obtained, and from the other tiramisu. The girls were surprised, because it was a new dessert that they had not tried yet. Yold and Luke set off on the road. Yold never ceased to be amazed at the protagonist's strength. Just yesterday, he changed vegetables, but today it turned out that a log can also be edible. Luke remembered that Yold had never seen such a thing. If you think about it, imitation is more like sacrificing a log, and not its transformation. It is as if he sends information about the log somewhere, and then a cake appears. Maybe this power is much more logical than he thinks. Where did the first seed come from? What came first? An egg or a chicken? This is a rather complex question in botany and biology. Primitive organic matter evolved into plants and animals. Perhaps Akasha collects such information. In other words, cats, people, and even tomatoes, sugar, logs, and cakes all came from the primordial matter. It is quite possible that they returned to the primordial matter, or maybe everything came from organic matter somewhere in the abyss of the ocean. Then it is clear why he creates one thing from another. Where did he go anyway? He uses Akasha to get data from it, that makes sense. But how exactly it works, he did not know. Yold told Master Luke that when they cross that river, they will be in the city. Luke said that they have gone far, but the estate is still visible. It is huge. Yold said that it just seems so. He did not pay attention to it. On the other hand, this is the Viscount's estate. It must be large. In case of an emergency, there must be enough space to evacuate people. In addition, there is enough space to station soldiers. Fortunately, the estate has not yet been needed for such a thing, but such is the law. Luke said that now it became clear to him. Yold said it was a good defense against bandits. There was a lot of open ground there that was well patrolled. Yold had heard that Luke had come from the mountains. Not many people were willing to go through the mountains where the shooting star bears lived. Luke thought he hadn't even met them yet, and didn't really want to, but only from a safe distance, somewhere in the city. One of the passers-by greeted Yold. He said he hadn't been to the tavern for a long time, invited him to come by more often. The young man saluted Yold and said he thought the boss was in the estate today. A young girl called Yold uncle and asked how Sasha was doing. She asked him to tell Sasha that she wouldn't mind having tea with her. The girl asked what kind of cat it was. Luke meowed. Yold replied that it was Lady Clarice's pet. He had just become attached to it. He decided to show the cat the city. The girl said it was a cute kitten. MC looked at the city and noticed that there were quite a few shops and people. It was a quiet city. There weren't many adventurers and mercenaries here either. Luke whispered if there was an adventurer or monster hunter guild here. Yold replied that considering the city's territory wasn't that big, there was no need for one. But there was a guild in the county capital. When a dungeon appeared nearby, a branch would usually open. Luke thought, there was a dungeon here? He was looking forward to it. Yold pulled him up and said that there was nothing like that here. Luke whispered, so this kind of thing happens in this world. He understood everything. Yold thanked MC for understanding everything. He said that the protagonist is not familiar with this world at all. His father was an adventurer and guarded caravans. Many people from there then go to become personal bodyguards. His father was also hired by a family of merchants, and then Yold followed in his father's footsteps and was hired by Rise. By the way, Rise's father died of the plague. Luke was very surprised. If you think about it, it's hard to be an adventurer. It's a tough job, but it pays well. And so they walked through the city and got to a lonely house, which was far from the road. Yold said that they should go here. The cat looked at the house. Wow, it's quite small. Yold said it's safe here, no problems. But if you think about it, the ruler's wife lives in such conditions, surprisingly. But Lady Vertell has never been a spoiled lady. The protagonist asked, does she have a strong character? Yodel answered affirmatively. Yeah, and she's a mage too. He said she has wind magic. You can make a lot of things lighter. You can throw enemies back with wind currents or send a fog in which you can hide. That's just what came to his mind. Luke thought, so Lady Vertell can protect herself, and then said okay. MC turned to Mr. Yodel and told him to wait for him here, and he himself will go and pretend to be a stray cat. Yodel agreed, perfect. The protagonist will make a good spy. Luke replied that he wouldn't like to do that. The cat said he'll take a quick look at her and then come back. Yodel asked, does the protagonist really want to just take a look? Maybe throw a stone at the window so Lady Vertell will definitely look out. Luke agreed, good idea. He went closer to one of the windows. He thought that Vertell's bedroom was here. The cat took a small stone in his paw. It was time to misbehave. He swung and threw the stone at the window. Lady Vertell immediately opened the window and looked out. A cat? Luke meowed. She grunted a little and said, a very nice guest, and asked him to make himself at home. Then she closed the window and went deeper into the house. Luke thought she looked noticeably older, but Clarissa looked a lot like her. This was definitely Lady Vertell. After a while, the cat returned to his companion. Yold was surprised. Oh, so quickly? He heard Lady Vertell, but what was the point anyway? The protagonist replied that he just wanted to take a look at her today. It seemed to him that she looked healthy. Yold said upset, only when she is not having an attack. Sometimes she coughs a lot and coughs up blood. It is a serious illness. Luke asked, I wonder if holy magic can help her? Yold explained, it is difficult to do. Healing magic can only activate people's regenerative abilities. When it is used on people who cannot recover, the illness can become more serious. But it closes normal wounds without any problems. Luke thought, so that's how it works. Maybe something can be done with cat magic, but considering that he overdid it with the stone cat, he is not ready to conduct experiments on people yet. The protagonist asked, did the plague that happened 10 years ago manifest itself the same way? Yold said that it did not. That plague was called Peter's fever. It is a disease that progressed very quickly and led to death. Lady Vertell's disease is associated with the respiratory tract and progresses more slowly. No one has a cure for this disease. Sometimes people manage to recover, but most people cannot be saved. The cat grinned. He had an idea. Yold extended his hand and said that if they were finished, then they can go back. Luke sat on his hand. He mentally apologized to Lady Vertell, but he would have to invade her personal space. The protagonist remembered how he read the Encyclopedia of People. Vertell Riedelheim, 36 years old, human, female. Physical strength F, intelligence B, charisma C, combat power F, magic power C, spirit D, cat strength 68. Singing skills B, wind magic C, everyday life C. As he thought, physical strength is in decline, but he was more interested in the next page. Information about Lady Vertell from the Akasha system. The house she was born in, events from her childhood, meeting with Mr. Rise, the birth of her eldest son and Lady Clarissa, and most importantly, contracting tuberculosis 2 winters ago. After the attack, Vertell decided to isolate herself and moved away from her family. The disease continues to progress and she lives every day in fear of the disease. Bingo. The protagonist was happy. The Encyclopedia of People is written in a language he can understand. A disease that has a different name in this world is named after a disease he knows. Tuberculosis. Let me tell you something about his past. It happened when he was still in school. There was an outbreak of tuberculosis in his class. The end. The cat thought, that's it. He had tuberculosis, and to cure it, he took antibiotics. Which means he can create antibiotics through imitation. Yold looked at the cat and asked, is something wrong? He said that the cat was laughing evilly. Luke apologized and said that, with the help of magical analysis, he understood what kind of disease Lady Vertell had. It is known in his world. He can try to make a medicine. Yold was surprised. What? So Luke can help her? The cat answered, well, it's not entirely clear yet. This medicine needs to be taken every day for 6 months. He can make the medicine, but if you take it incorrectly, the disease can begin to progress even more. We need to figure out how to make her take the medicine. Yold said that this can be left to him and Rise. Thanks to his trade connections, they managed to get a medicine that can help. You could say so. It will work, right? Luke was delighted. It would definitely work. He could check if the medicine was working at any time using the encyclopedia. The encyclopedia was even more useful than he imagined. Yold quickened his pace and said that they needed to tell Rise about this right away. The cat agreed. Yeah. And so, 6 months later, Lady Vertell's illness was cured. She was about to return to the estate. But before that, Luke would have other troubles. Do you want to know what's going on? By the way, about what happened. It all started with one meeting of 2 people. One asked, sister? The second answered, protecting Frederick was more important. As for the sister, there was no need to worry. The first answered that he would not leave her. He asked if she was somewhere on the border of the kingdom of Nurk now, but that would be later. In the meantime, Rise was talking to Lilfley. He asked her what was going on with Luke's magic. Did she understand what element? Lilfley answered, no. Even with her talent for magic, she could not accurately assess Luke's magic. As for the element, there was clearly more than one. She didn't know enough to classify his magic. Rise said it was to be expected. Luke's magic was simply out of this world. And one more thing. This was very important. He asked her if she thought Luke was dangerous. Lilfley was surprised by this question, but answered, Luke wouldn't harm people as long as they didn't want to harm him. He would protect everyone, the whole family, from any threat, she was sure of it. Rise scratched his chin and thought, a very unexpected answer from her. He smirked and said, he didn't need Luke to protect them all. It was enough for him to protect Clarice. Besides, she wasn't so lonely with him. She wasn't even allowed to meet her mother, and her father was busy managing the territory. She didn't have any friends her age here, and her older brother wasn't here at all. Clarice wasn't used to complaining, but she understood everything perfectly well. Besides, the thing is, her mother's condition was deplorable. Lilfley was scared by what she heard. Rise continued, it sounds scary, but in the near future, it is better to prepare for the worst. When that time comes, Rise wants Luke to be with Clarissa. Lilfley was very upset by what she heard. Rise thought Lilfley was also close to Lady Vertell. Not only Clarissa needs someone by her side, but Lilfley too. Their conversation was interrupted by Yold. He entered the room and asked if Rise had a minute. Rise turned to him and said, yes. Then he saw the cat in Yold's arms and was very surprised. Oh wait, Luke is with him too? They became close. Why did this happen all of a sudden? Yold turned to Mr. Luke and asked if he could explain everything himself. Yold said that he himself did not really understand all this. The protagonist agreed, of course. He began to explain that the fact was that he had found out what disease Mr. Rise's wife is suffering from. Perhaps the cat managed to create a cure. The protagonist explained that in his world it was a known disease, but he couldn't be sure that the cure would work until Lady Vertell started taking it. MC showed him the pills. Rise was surprised. A cure? These white pills? The protagonist confirmed, exactly. If she takes them for about half a year, there is a chance that she can recover. This is a cure for pneumonia. Silence reigned. No one could believe what they heard. Rise said, will she recover? And will she come back here? Lilfley, for once, was happy to hear what she heard. Luke replied that he couldn't say for sure, but it was definitely worth a try. In his world, this medicine saved many people. The protagonist thinks that Rise will be able to convince his wife to take this medicine. Rise thought for a moment and fell silent. Yold turned to him and asked him to tell Lady Vertell that he himself had found a rare cure through his connections. If he thought that there was no need to tell the truth. But Yold said that in his opinion, it was worth a try. Rise turned to the protagonist and said that this was great news, but he decided to ask him why Luke wanted to save Lady Vertell. Just don't tell him that you've seen her? The cat waved his paws categorically and answered, no, he just looked from afar. But Lady Clarissa once mentioned that she would like to introduce him to his mother when she recovers, and a good pet should fulfill the wishes of its owner. Luke said that we can't just leave Clarissa's people. He asked Mr. Rise to help him. Rise thought for a moment and agreed, okay, it's worth a try. Luke walked peacefully on the grass and hummed a melody. We've sorted out the medicine. There's nothing to worry about now. The knights and servants will give Lady Vertell the medicine. He made a batch for about a week. He was able to make them from sweets associated with sugar. Nothing can be surprising anymore. The white powder can generally be turned into many things, such as salt, flour, starch, and various spices. But they decided to keep the medicine a secret from Clarice, and at the same time from Lilfly. She does not know how to pretend. This secret is known only to them and the butler. He prepared the medicine in case something happens to him. Everything is perfect. Fortunately, the situation with the tomatoes earned him a reputation, and everyone agreed to cooperate. He left the construction of the bath to Lady Clarice and Lilfly. Lady Vertell should also get better. He can rest. He was unable to get enough sleep again. Although it smelled delicious and was soft, he could not calm down. Lil dragged him into bed again. Today he wanted to find a good place to sleep. He went to the dogs. Cecil greeted him and thanked him for coming. Luke decided to look in on the dogs. It was warm here and there were a lot of fluffy little dogs. But all the dogs mentally called him Master Luke, Master. He decided that it would probably be quite hot here and they treated him like a king. Cecil asked if they should treat him like a god. Luke answered that it would be even worse. He said that he wanted to know if they wanted to pass on anything to Master Rise. Cecil answered that they didn't need anything yet. But if they needed anything, they would definitely pass it on. Now they take turns guarding the fields, and Master Rise is often busy. That's why they almost never go hunting, but they are ready to wait. Luke thought that the loyalty of dogs is sometimes amazing. Luke said that it is important to be a proud pet and asked them to follow his example. Cecil agreed. Luke passed the barracks and decided that there were a lot of soldiers there and he should forget about this place right away. He did not want to sleep among the noisy training sessions. There was a barracks on the other side. But there is a place that is best suited, where there is a natural water source. It is cool and beautiful here. No complaints. It is the perfect option. All that remains is to find a place to lie down. There are centipedes on the tree. But Luke had a plan. He took out a stone and used cat magic again. He threw the stone up and ordered the stone cat to come out. The cat appeared and meowed in response. Luke offered to sleep together. The cat answered, meow. The stone cat lay down on the grass, and Luke climbed on top of him. A smooth, chic stone, it is comfortable to lie on, and the sun pleasantly warms it. The wind blows, and nearby the water babbles and birds sing. How quiet and calm. This is exactly how a real cat should live. Luke heard a voice in his sleep. The voice asked for forgiveness. It asked MC, is he a cat? Luke answered, cat, without opening his eyes. He asked who it was. It was a female voice, but it was older than Lady Clarice's. The voice asked, what is the cat doing? Luke asked, what does it sound like? And immediately answered that he is trying to sleep. The voice asked, what kind of stone cat is this? It is a magical power, like a divine beast. She was a little scared. Luke thought about the fact that the voice is afraid of a stone cat. She asked to summon such a monster to sleep on it. Luke answered, it is not for a fight. He just wanted to lie down. The voice asked to lie down. She asked to tell the truth. Did the cat come here to take the spring? To capture it? Did he come to take it from her by force? Luke answered, no. He just wanted to sleep. MC opened his eyes and asked, whose voice was this? Luke did not see anyone nearby, but he felt that it was not a person nearby. He asked the voice, was it a spirit? The voice answered, yes. It was a low-ranking spirit of this source. The sweet girl said her name was Stella.